can see here. R.L. Burnside. Do you know R.L. Burnside?
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
Yeah, I've got it's hard to move the camera so you get a good look. It's hard to see.
Yeah,
I'm a bit of a collector of a certain a guy called Derek Hess, who's a poster artist.
Nice.
And that was one of my first purchases. Like, I don't know who R.L. Burnside is, but I'll just quickly. He went to jail for killing a man, I think. He
really?
Shot some, yeah, and I love what he's saying. He's put what he said to the judge or to the police when he was arrested. It says, "I didn't mean to kill anybody. I just shot him in the head. Dying between him and God." So he just shot him. The rest of it was up to God. and he convicted me for that. So there you go. I just thought with your love of music, and you might know who he is. Like, I don't know him personally. I just like the art for what it is.
Sure. So, that's cool. That's very cool.
I got a whole room for it. My wife hates it because he can be a bit controversial with what he puts on. They're all limited prints, so there's only like 150 of them, and he doesn't do any more. But some of the stuff he does is a bit out there.
Sure.
For my wife. So this is sort of like my room. This is where I get to put.
I was about to say, was this your like little? Would she call it your asylum? You know, basically that she keeps you in. You know, in this area.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah. She closed the door behind me, and that's it. She loves it. She probably wishes the room was lead lined. That'd be even better. But,
as a kid, I always thought those rooms that they had in asylums with like the padded rooms would be kind of fun as long as you could get out of them, you know. But the idea of bouncing around in there seemed like a pretty good idea, and they do it for kids now. So I mean,
I was going to say, mate. It's like a jumping castle at a kid's party.
Yeah.
Just go to town.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where I got the idea for a jumping castle. I have no idea from, someone came up, hey, that asylum thing looks really good for kids. Just make a jumping castle. Who knows?
You guys faring okay? Everything going okay?
Yeah, we're good here, man. Yeah. I think as far as like we're not in lockdown, we are to the degrees you can only go out 2 people at a time unless you're a family unit within the house. You can only go to work if you can't work from home.
Okay.
Social distancing, but I think we got onto it pretty quickly here, like closing the borders to the country. Everybody, if you're not a resident of Australia, leave now.
All the schools,
all the schools shut down. If you're a member of Australia, like a resident of Australia, and you're overseas, get your ass back now. So look, there's still people coming out, but they've put them in. They go into lockdown facilities now, and for 2 weeks and stuff like that. So I think we sort of got ahead of it a bit quickly than some countries. It's definitely the US. Italy. Someone put up on my Facebook the other day. They had Australia. They had you can see how many flights are in the air at one time, how many planes, and they had Australia. And there would have been 20, and a lot of those would be people coming back home and people leaving. There's no interstate travel now.
Sure.
But you show the US. There's hundreds of planes in the air. Hundreds.
That's because our White House has become one of those Volkswagen Bugs where all the clowns come out of at one time, including the one with tan face paint, and a big marmalade wig. So yeah, it's unbelievable. The governor of our state literally was on a national magazine, Newsweek, quoted this week saying the only reason he put shelter in place as a rule, as an order for the state of Georgia, is because he didn't realize until this week that COVID-19 can be spread through asymptomatic individuals. And he didn't know that. And the CDC, the Center for Disease Control for the United States, is in Atlanta, which is And he didn't realize that. That's what he literally said. But this is the same guy who won an election with commercials where he drove around in a red pickup truck and telling people he owned a gun and that he was going to round up illegal immigrants himself and like send them out of state. There's Atlanta, and Atlanta must be an island of like of some level of like some modicum of intelligence. And then there's the rest of like Georgia from the south down, like of Atlanta that I don't even want to know because they voted his ass in.
It'd be like when we think of, like, everybody goes to Deliverance straight away, don't they? But when we think of that sort of deep south, is it the south part of Georgia that
it's? What's sad is Deliverance is actually not where that took place. Is not actually far from where I live. It's like it's actually just further north. You know, it's not that far. It's probably about an hour away. But But yes, mostly
great scenery.
South Georgia. It is beautiful scenery.
Yeah.
But yeah, and again, that did happen about 45 years ago. Yes. So, the movie at least. So, but I would say, yes, the extreme parts of North Georgia and the extreme parts of South Georgia, anything outside of Atlanta and maybe the university towns, it tends to be that way. And apparently he also opened the beaches up for public use and told the mayors and the city governments of those towns that if they didn't comply, that imprisonment and fines would be subjected upon these people. And one of the mayors literally like went off on him in the national media, talking, bringing all of this up and talking about what an idiot he really is in a nice professional way. But it was borderline saying you're a fucking idiot, so it was. Yeah. So, these are the times that we live in the United States, and I'm I don't know what else to say other than I hope it comes to a swift end fairly soon. As soon as possible.
I don't know about that though. I have a friend in Spain, Matt, and she's been in lockdown for 3 weeks, and they got told today that they're going to be in lockdown for another 3 weeks.
Oh yeah. Oh no, I was talking about the political climate of our country. But I know this ain't changing anytime soon.
No. Look, I'd be surprised if football season started.
Yeah, I would be too, and that's a whole other interesting animal. But we're, the way I look at it is we're 2 months away from probably even having an idea. I mean, like, it's such a fluid situation that I think that the way a lot of people are looking at it here is, I've got some people who talk to NFL people and they're like, I don't see how this is going to happen. And then there are other people I talk with who have a fair amount of cross section of skills or in understanding of different things. And they say, listen, if there's enough testing, if they can develop enough testing if they can develop testing in 2 months that allows you to test every day, and you don't play in front of a crowd and you just play for the TV money and you can test these individuals every day, that would be a possibility. And then the counter argument is that, well, are these people, the NFL, going to be able to test their people every single day while other people are waiting in line to get a test? I mean, that a lot's going to have to change. And the way I look at it is, we don't know what's going to happen 2 months from now. And then I'm like, well, ask me 2 months from now after that. And I probably will say, I don't know. Ask me in 2 more months.
So. Well, our football season started here, about 3 weeks ago? Yeah. And it got shut down after the first week. The first lot of games finished, and that was it. They played in front of empty stadiums.
Yeah.
And look, our big stadium here in Melbourne holds over 100,000 people.
Yeah.
And the first game of the year is between two really big clubs, and actually the club that I sent you the scarf of.
Yes.
Well, that's quite interesting because when I sent you the scarf, they sucked.
Yeah, and then they won.
They've won 2 of the last 3 years. We waited 30 odd years for what we call the Premiership or Super Bowl, Premiership, and all of a sudden, and now they're seriously like the best team.
Wow,
going around.
That's just crazy.
Yeah. But we played. So the first game's usually in front of at least like 90,000 people. two big clubs, and it was just there was no one. Everybody said it'd be really good to hear what they're saying, but you can't really pick up. You can hear noise and yelling, but you can't actually hear what they're yelling anyway. It's too far away. It's not that clear. But it was just, I watched it for a quarter, and I just couldn't watch it without the atmosphere. It's just the game seems the same, but it doesn't. Yeah. And I don't know how that would work in American with the NFL.
It's going to be. Who knows? It's definitely going to be a bizarre situation for sure. And let's just. I'm just hoping. I mean, there's a part of me obviously that's hoping that happens because that's my livelihood. But on the other hand, you want people to be safe, and you don't want to be people to be put at risk, and that's more important, really. In the scheme of things. Even though there's like the adolescent you that's like, no, it's not. That's why we're not adolescents any longer.
On one radio station here, what they're doing is every Friday, instead of talking about the games coming up, they do it. And what they do is they have dice. And because we play 4 quarters, they roll a dice, and that's the score. And they talk it up like it's a game. Like, that's a great quarter. They're fantastic. So they've been doing that for every game. So it's, you come up with a way.
At this rate, I'm thinking maybe I need to start learning about hydroponic gardening and start selling greens like, around here out of my basement or something. I don't know. Yeah. So that's kind of the next step, I think, in the next couple of hours or the next couple of months is considering if I need to start looking into a sideline.
Well, look, we should get this thing started.
Sure, let's do it.
Because one of the questions is related to what you just spoke about. So,
oh, really?
Yes, it is. All right. So, hello, we're the Aussie guys. As you can already see, Matt Waldman's already here. We'll restart talking.
Well, it's a NASCAR start. So it's a NASCAR
fine.
Or my mom's car when I was growing up.
Yeah. Oh, is that because you had to push it down the driveway quietly before you started the engine?
Yeah, that's right. See, there you go.
Mate, oh, no, I didn't even risk that. I didn't risk that with my old man. No way. Not a chance in hell. Mate, he didn't even trust me to drive the car when I actually had a license or when I was like 30 years old. He wouldn't let me take the family car out.
Really?
No.
Well, see, when I was growing up, we had a friend with a paper route. I think what was his name? Jimmy Diulis. And they had an old Buick, and he had a paper route. And before we could go bowling after elementary school, we had to help him do the afternoon paper route. And occasionally their car would stall out, and we had to push it down the hill so that it would get the running start. So for that.
But you weren't doing that. You were pushing that just so your mum didn't hear you start the car while you're knocking it off.
Oh,
basically.
Yeah, no, that's a whole other story. No. There's other stories for that. But like, pushing this one I gave you was on the up and up.
Oh, okay.
Very good.
Fair enough. All right, then. Matt, okay, related to what we were talking about just a minute ago, you might have to look for another a side occupation for a while, mate. When in lockdown, what is something that scares you that you might actually do? What was your
You mean what do you mean? I don't know. I'm not sure what you mean by that.
No.
Give me an example.
You're not going
you that you might actually do, and I might be able to help out of this.
Just something if you're bored. What's something you're bored that you've thought of in the back of your head that, geez, if I ever got bored, I might actually do this, but it does scare me a little bit.
My daughter or something.
No, my daughter dyed her hair pink because she got bored after a couple of weeks off school. She dyed it bright pink.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. Like, you're not going near your wife in any sort of way, Matt, because, mate, she's the one with the power tools.
She is. She is. She's right. She's downstairs right now putting new wainscoting on the walls, and I always have to go by that hammer gun and say, is that loaded still? Do you still have the battery in that? But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think if things got crazy, I was just telling you guys before we started, is that if things really got crazy, I might have to start getting into like becoming a hydroponic farmer or something, and like maybe have to start figuring out a way to build some of these things, and maybe I can at least sell some food, grow some and sell some food in that regard. And and look at it from that perspective, which would be odd because I don't know if I have a green thumb or not. I've never even tried growing anything. So this will be a first, but I heard it's actually easier growing hydroponic than it is anything else. And since we do have a water shortage in the world and it's only going to get worse, on a long term, why not, do something like that where it uses less water to grow things. So I might find myself turning to something to that weird of an angle where I'm like, I would just die laughing. Like things I never thought I'd be doing is like selling, kale and lettuce and herbs and trying to grow my own ginger and things like that and see how that would work out. I'd feel like I went full hippie on that regard. But my wife already thinks I'm a hippie, so I'm just a hippie in disguise with the whole football thing. But that's I might go full bore there at that point.
Nice. Grow the beard out. Hair.
Oh, the hairs are already out there right now. I'm just hiding it under a hat right now.
Nice.
Like if you've ever seen Back to the Future and seen Doc Brown, that's kind of what I look like when I take this hat off. Yeah.
Excellent. All right, so we should probably get into some.
Yeah, jump in.
We got you on today, Matt, because I love talking wide receivers with you. Like, if I'd like to talk about everything, but like running backs, quarterbacks, but I think condensing it down to just one position gives us a bit more detail, obviously, and that's why we get you on. That's how we've had you on the last couple of years. So, for me, I looked at the class, and the class is deep, but I see it a bit like the curve. What's the curve we're trying to do with
flatten the curve?
Flatten the curve. I see it a little bit like that. There's no huge spikes in players, and where it really drops off, it's just a nice linear curve. Would you see it like that? I
think so. I mean, I think for me, there's a good 12 players who are really, really strong enough to give you that first year production if they're put into an offense. They may not be stars, but they'll show you potential to be one. Say like Cortland Sutton when he was a rookie, where he had clear flaws, but at the same time, you put him on the field and he showed upside. And then year 2, he really took off. And I think that there's 12 players who are capable of doing that immediately. And then I think that there are guys who are maybe another, let's look here, maybe another, another maybe 10 guys who are capable of giving you some promising production, but not weekly production from a fantasy standpoint, who you might look at and go, okay, that's something we might be able to build on. And I'm excited about him next year if he can continue to improve. And I think there's another 10 guys like that. Now, of course, we're always dealing with potential right now, and we're not looking at the reality of whether they want to work, like Dante Pettis, who obviously started off great and then didn't want to work. And apparently that whole thing really derailed his second year. And now it's about whether or not he's going to put in the work to do it. And by that point, he may even get traded, before he's able to prove anything. So he's kind of derailed his own career because the talent was there. It just, the desire to work wasn't. Or you look at somebody like, Hakeem Butler last year, who, certainly was I graded very strongly as well. And he didn't get off to a strong start in camp. And then he got hurt, and then he was basically out for the entire year. So those types of things happen, and we're going to see that with a lot of the guys in this particular class. But on a potential standpoint, a lot of strong players.
So just for a lot of people that they'll, when they go to do fantasy, so to speak, they'll be looking at what you have to say, obviously, and they'll combine it with what other people have to say and then put it all together. And then they'll probably go and watch the highlight film of players, because that's what a lot of guys. So which wide receiver in this class, if you went and watched the highlight film, is going to give you a really false image of what he does in real football? Because the highlight reel, like I've said, AJ, I could put together a 2-minute clip of AJ and make him look absolutely fantastic. You know, a bit of music, throw a bit of music in there, and you know. But there's some players on here that I just went this morning and had a look at because there's so many players now. I'm onto running backs and other positions. I have to just go back and just refresh my images of them. And I looked at some highlight and just go, man, that's not what I've got written down here. But I didn't do it for that. I did it just to refresh. Once I see him and I see him play, then everything comes back. So which player do you think is the more he's going to let you down if you just go and watch the highlights?
I think it's a tough question, but I think there's two guys that where their highlights will probably get you more influenced in a positive way about him than what his game needs in terms of development. And to frame it from that standpoint, just slightly a little bit kinder might be that Donovan Peoples-Jones out of Michigan and Colin Johnson out of Texas are two guys like that.
Matt. All right.
They're both
Colin Johnson. He's on my list of top. Throw him away.
See, there you go.
Killing me, mate. You're killing me already. Dude.
See, they're both guys that can play, and they're both guys that I included in that last tier of where if you give them spot time, they'll be able to develop for next year, depending on where they set up. But here's the thing. With Donovan Peoples-Jones, you'll watch his punt return ability and his after the catch ability, and he's unbelievable after the catch. Terrific athlete. He goes up and wins the ball in the air, and it's beautiful. He has terrific hand-eye coordination, skill above the rim to be able to make the plays on fade routes and sideline boundary routes, things like that. And he does that extremely well. The problem with Donovan Peoples-Jones is that he doesn't have great change of direction, quickness when it comes to really bending into his routes. So the full route tree really isn't at his disposal at this point. While he didn't have a strong quarterback, some of the things that he didn't do are independent of what the quarterback could or couldn't do for him. So he's a guy that is a little bit more one-dimensional right now. And I think that while a lot of people are saying he's going to be a lot better pro, and I think there's a chance for that to happen, I think he's a good candidate for it. I just think that he has to prove that the system was against him and it wasn't just him, that it wasn't him, right now. And I think one of the things that's going on with him is that route running is going to be the bigger issue. He has some issues with framing his hands, kind of like Cortland Sutton did, where using your hands in the correct position to be able to attack the ball so you don't fight it. So that's one. Colin Johnson, there's a lot I love about his game. But the thing is that the reason that he's a little lower on my list is that even when he goes up to win the football, one of the things that you'll notice is that he literally dives backwards for the ball. And you'll see him catching these balls that look beautiful on a highlight reel, which is like him arching all the way back and catching the ball behind his head while getting parallel with the ground. And that's an impressive catch. But when you watch how he set up that play, what should have happened is that he should have timed his feet and put himself in a position where he jumps forward to attack the ball towards the ball as opposed to leaning away from the ball. And as a result of that, he creates harder catch situations than he should, allows the defender to be able to make a play on him as he's trying to make that catch. And third, he's not putting himself in a position where he can turn and get his feet into the boundary. So he's actually creating more difficulties for himself than he should on plays that should be simple conversions by comparison. Now, he can do some, he's physical. He's certainly someone that has enough separation to be able to get downfield on play action passes and be a vertical threat in that regard. And I like his short area quickness just enough to be able to make the first man miss in the open field or power through him. So I like his game. He's an interesting player because on some aspects, I think he's underrated. And then in other areas, I feel like he has work to do. So it kind of evens out because, it kind of evens out to the point where it's like he should be better than he is in certain respects. But the reasons that people are like, well, he faded last, he would have been a top prospect last year, but now he's not. I don't think the rationale for that makes sense. I think the real issue is that he's always had these problems and people just didn't see them enough because they were impressed by the physical skills, and they are immense. I mean, he reminds me, if you could put him in the slot as a big slot player. I think he could be a Marcus Colston or an Alan Lazard type of player with even more production. And I think that may end up being the route for him if they don't put him outside, if they don't feel like he's fast enough. Because if they don't do that, then he's kind of more of an Auden Tate type of player who people find promising, but is he really going to get onto the field full time?
Well, if he could comp to Colston, he's going to have a very good career in the NFL.
Sure.
But that's his high side, just saying.
Really. Yeah. And he needs the fit. He needs that fit for it to happen. And who knows if it will.
But because he can play, he does have the short area quickness you said to be that sort of guy in the middle of the field. Like, he's 6'6", 221 roughly. And he moves well for a 6'6" guy. And every year, Matt, we talk to you, and I just get enamored with the big guys. And every year they let me down. They just constantly do it. But again, I feel that he could be the next one. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, we all have guys that we hope for here, and certainly I think that Johnson has a chance. I mean, his grade for me is someone that's a contributor, someone who can play right away. It's just a matter of whether he can grow into being an every down starter, and part of that is the fit there, because I don't think he has the speed to be a every down deep threat without the aid of play action or double moves, but he's faster than people think, because a lot of the throws that I saw that they were like, oh, he's not fast enough. Well, he's got the defender beat by a yard or two. So, he can't, a lot of those were overthrows. Sam Ehlinger probably overthrew a lot of those passes compared to him just being slow.
This is another thing you have to look at it. And we have this problem every year, except if you look at the, LSU and the big Alabama and whatnot, is the quarterback play. And what I really noticed more this year, I don't know if it's just because I was looking for it, but there's a lot of quarterbacks, the lower quarterbacks, to get more notice, is that they're doing, like, they have the quarterback keeper. Now, it's really frustrating when you start looking at the running backs. Like, so many quarterbacks put it in the belly and then rip it back out. I don't know if they want to be the hero or it gets some more film time. But from a wide receiver, it just means they're not throwing it as much.
Certainly some of those things are the case, and some of that too is also, especially with certain quarterbacks at levels where maybe they're not as confident throwing the ball and they're very confident in their legs. Yeah, that can happen to the extreme. Yeah,
I just find some of the better wide receivers are just stuck with some very average one read sort of quarterbacks. And it seems to be but it's something we have to put up with every year. And I hope just people, when they look at these guys, take that into account, that it's, you got to look at the quarterback who's throwing the ball too. But two guys I want to bring up, and they're both last names Jefferson. Now, I'm a bit disappointed in where you have one of them, Matt, and that's Van Jefferson. That, to be honest, I actually don't see a lot of difference between the two, and I actually like Van Jefferson better. I think Van Jefferson does everything that Justin Jefferson does, and you watch him, if you're willing to sit down and watch game after game off the line, mate, his footwork is impeccable. Like, corners look at him and just go, mate, just throw the hands. I have no idea where you're going. He does a little bit of dance, a bit of Fred Astaire, but not too much. Sometimes he does a lot. Next play, he does hardly any, and totally confuses the corner he's lined up against. Just tell me how you feel about both of these guys, because I went back on the Justin Jefferson. I'm thinking, mate, there's a lot of things I like about him, but there's a lot of things that I think when you project him into the pros, where you have to understand that, corners and that, I always give him one more step at least to cover.
Yeah.
And a lot of his balls that are caught where a pro is going to get his hand in there. I don't think his separation is all that great. I think Justin Jefferson. No, I think Van Jefferson gets, as a slot receiver, he's going to rack, if you in fantasy football, he's going to rack up a ton of points.
Okay.
But he gets good separation
early.
Call me wrong, Matt, if you want. That's all right.
Well,
we're friends.
I'll put it to you this way. Van Jefferson's you're right. Van Jefferson's a terrific route runner. You know, and his father was a wide receiver for the Patriots and the Lions and the Chargers back in the day. And they have a lot of similarities, actually. They were very good route runners who had trouble catching the football. And when I say trouble catching the football, it's just enough that it dropped him out of the like an immediate starter tier for me for Van, because the problem with Van is that one is that when you watch his tape, he's almost always wide open. So, you know, so many of his plays are wide open that it's a lot of easier catches. But when he had to make plays in the middle of the field, when he had to make catches in tight coverage, and he had to do so using his hands in the correct position to be able to make some of those plays in tight areas, you see him fight the ball. You see him have trouble also being able to catch the ball against contact because he fought the ball not having uniform hand position in those situations. And those difficulties get magnified in the NFL if you don't correct them to an extent. And so, you know, him being in the slot, that makes total sense because he will not have to face as much press coverage, but it makes him less versatile too. So, you know, the way I grade players right now at this stage is really, it's without a team fit. So I have to look at, you know, a certain level of all the things that they can do at the receiver position, what's required at that receiver position. So with Van, to me, it's more, he projects more as a slot receiver. And I agree that he can be a very valuable slot receiver, but even still, even if he doesn't have to deal with press coverage and even though he wins a lot right now, and we can talk about how good Derek Stingley Jr. is and Christian Fulton is, but, you know, we're going to see whenever we play football again, Christian Fulton and Derek Stingley. Well, Derek Stingley's not going to be playing the NFL yet, but Christian Fulton, you can go back to maybe even other years and watch the cornerback everyone said is going to be good and seasoned and faced all these top SEC players and faced everybody, and they come in the NFL and they look like a deer in headlights, you know, and it takes them a year or 2 years to actually become decent, because it's a whole other level of facing guys who are much more physical, much savvier, have better technical skill, and than what even Van Jefferson shows. So Van Jefferson's winning against LSU's corners. I'm like, well, that's great, but that doesn't mean that he's winning against NFL corners, because trust me, those guys aren't NFL corners right now. So he's still going to have some difficulty with the physical aspects of the game. He does get knocked around a little bit more when there's a chance to be facing someone who's a little more patient with him. He has some difficulty with patient corners. I watched him against Tennessee, where corners were a little bit more patient with him off the line and didn't bite on the first set of moves, and he couldn't get open against that. You know, other routes he did, but those he didn't. And a lot of times we get sucked into the idea of these receivers with all these fancy moves that, you know, they're going to be really good, like Andy Isabella, you know, who was a guy that last year had a lot of different moves off the line, or Braxton Miller out of Ohio State, who had a lot of different moves off the line and impressed people at the Senior Bowl. But that's really just like practice, that's like practice work type of stuff, where you have, you know, what ends up happening is that you're not, you're taking too much time. You're being inefficient. Now, Van Jefferson isn't always that way. He's, to be honest, I mean, he's much more efficient than he is inefficient. But when he faces a patient corner, which is what he's going to face in the NFL, that's going to be a little bit bigger an issue. And then the hands issue concerned me. So right now he's on the border between being a contributor who can play right away, and then being a rotational starter, being a guy who can immediately start and put him in a role, and he's going to perform to a starter level of production. So he's right on that cusp. Justin Jefferson I like more, because Justin Jefferson actually played in the slot this year. He played in an NFL offense. He played with he was given the opportunity to run option routes, choice routes. So he's used to being able to be on the same page with his quarterback with those types of decisions. And then the year before, when you watch his tape, you see him play on the outside a good bit, and he showed skill on the outside to run strong routes, to be able to win against tight coverage, the skill to be able to go up and win the ball in the air. The biggest flaw that he might have as a receiver is what you saw last year when you saw him in the slot, when they'd run these slot fades that are go deep, and he seemed to track the ball over the wrong shoulder or expect the ball over a different shoulder than than actually was coming. And I saw that repeatedly, but I think that's a correctable flaw overall. He tracked the ball well. He extends well for the ball. He wins the ball against tight coverage. He's very good at being able to adjust his routes in the middle of the field against zone coverage where his quarterback's scrambling. And while it may not look like a pretty route because it seems more like playground type of work, it's actually more important in the sense that if you're playing in the slot, you got to work your way open and you have to understand how to do that. And he does that extremely well. It's a savvy part of his game. And on top of that, he's a more physical player after the catch and a better player after the catch than Van Jefferson right now. Very good peripheral vision, very skilled at being able to make the first man miss. And he's a heck of a blocker. I mean, he'll take on linebackers in the run game, and he does it very well. It's not just shots where they blow somebody up. He's actually technically sound with delivering a punch. He can actually move his feet well. So he's a more versatile guy in terms of what he does. Maybe Van Jefferson from a route running perspective, oh yeah, he's a better route runner. He's a better route runner. But in the standpoint of releasing off the line, being able to get open free in zones, being able to catch the ball with good hands position after contact, being able to be used outside or inside, being able to run option routes, block, and run after the catch, I'd rather have Justin Jefferson.
And his hands are he's putting the stick him on the gloves, isn't he, as well? Justin Jefferson.
He might.
Mate doesn't drop a thing.
He doesn't. No,
he's great set of hands.
He's great adjustments. You can watch some games against Florida where there's a game against Florida with him as a junior, I guess. He was a junior last year if he was, or whatever it was last year. And there's a play that he makes, even though it goes out of bounds because the ball was too far away from him. He makes a stick with one hand that's just it's beautiful to watch. You can tell that he's got glue mitts for sure.
Yeah, he's your blue collar receiver, isn't he?
Yeah, he's kind of but I think he's kind of like what Keenan Allen is, except just faster.
Okay.
And maybe not as skilled as Keenan Allen, but he's in that neighborhood.
Yeah. Now, AJ, we purchased your the RSP, and you promoted it at one price. Let me tell you, we ain't paying that price in this country with our exchange rate. You're getting double out of us, Matt. I can tell you at the moment.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Much appreciated.
No, it's great to be here. Now, you're number 2 guy. I'm telling people to go out and get it, but I got my fingers crossed because you're giving away people that I like that I thought. But Dane Brugler came out and spoke about him like about 3 weeks ago, and I thought, that's it. Oh, that's it. I'm screwed. I'm not going to get this guy. But mate, I've been talking to. He's one of the first guys I watched, and this is Denzel Memes. Mate, I love him. This is my big guy love. And you have him at. AJ says you have him at number 2. AJ hasn't been nice enough to pass the RSP on, so I can have a look at the moment. He's going to wait until after the drafts are all done. But speak about Denzel Memes because I just reckon this guy's got huge upside.
Yeah, and he's been my number 2. I don't release rankings during the year, but it's fun for me to look back and go, who are guys that have stayed as high up on my ranking board throughout the year as I've added more receivers into the books in terms of who I've studied. And then how that's changed with the combine workouts and then or 2 or 3 waves of looking at games. Cause I may watch 3 or 4 games of a guy and then wait another 3 months and watch another 3 or 4 games. And then, wait another 3 or 4 months and watch another 4 or 5, something like that. So Mims has been number 2 since like October. And I haven't really said much about him because I figured I would just save it. I didn't think anybody was really going to be onto him too much. And then the more and more I saw, people seem to really start to like him. And his game grew. That's the big thing about him that's interesting, because the reason that he was kind of a late to being talked about until February, like around February, it just blew up where everybody was like, yeah, I love Denzel Mims, is because his game grew. When he first started out, you certainly saw skills with his game, but he developed as a route runner. He, especially off the line of scrimmage against press coverage, he has a lot of different moves against press coverage. He has skill to be able to use his footwork and his handwork skills, especially his footwork, to kind of set up defenders as the game goes along. He'll maybe use 2 little hesitation steps to get into a route, and then later in the game he'll use just 1 to run into the same route in the same situation and get the defender baited out of that. So he'll do things like that, and then he'll like even during run plays he'll do things to give a little hesitation or a couple of hesitation steps to see how a defender is going to play him, and then use that information that he sees from the defender so that the next time the defender lines up that way, he baits him into thinking it's going to be the same release and then do something different. So
on the run plays too, Matt, before you go, Matt, he as a run blocker, man, he's a seriously nasty dude. He is with it. I love that in a big guy. Yeah. To get a guy that just doesn't rely on his size, and that's how he overcomes. He's a nasty big guy.
Yeah, he is. And he definitely goes, he's a guy who is an aggressive player, and he's a smooth player too. So you see him as the route runner that he is. He's very smooth as a deep threat. He's able to get that separation, and he has, that excellent speed that you're looking for. But he also has, he has some drops in his game. He has some concentration drops,
some shockers too, Matt.
But he also has, incredible catches. He has some otherworldly plays, terrific body control. Yeah. And so what you see with him more than anything is that some of the drops he has are more from a focus-oriented perspective. They're not technically an issue. He has terrific awareness of the boundary. He's tough. He's able to make plays over the middle where you're going to watch him literally, stretch out in the middle of the field with a defender, trying to cut off the pass, and he'll catch the ball and the defender's arm and roll through it, holding onto the ball and the defender's arm with it, from a perspective where just catching the ball would have been tough enough, even without the defender there. So you see those types of plays from him. And I think that he is a guy that can definitely be at least a high-end second receiver on a team, like a Calvin Ridley type, who gets that kind of Calvin Ridley production and be a number 2 wide receiver. But there's also that upside for him to be the primary receiver in the offense and be a number 1.
Yeah, I like what you spoke about. Like off the lot, he sells his deep routes really well, I found. But press coverage, man, he is very physical. He has no problems about just slapping the guy's hands away. So you're getting the best of both worlds with him off the line. It doesn't matter pressed or if they play off him.
Yeah,
he's a good hard guy to cover.
Yeah, he's a good vocabulary of moves. I mean, he can use. He has different chops. He has different hesitation moves. He can use the wiper. He can use the arm over. He has some of the skills you're looking for with the hesitation steps, and he also can use the diamond release. He has a number of different footwork movements that he pairs with his hands that he's developed over the years, so that as you watch his tape year by year, you're seeing him add more to it. So you're seeing that he's learning and he's applying it on the field, and that's a really good trait to see.
Yeah, and as you said about the how he covers the field, you see some of the wide receivers and they run like track athletes. He's very fluid, and I always watch how many steps and how quick he's covering, like every 5 or 10 yards. He covers ground really quick, and he does it so smoothly.
Yeah.
So, really and some of those drops I found too, get rid of those one-handed catches out of your game.
Yeah.
Like he tries to catch with one hand when there's no need to do it. Yes. I think he's looking for a little bit of, hey, look, what a great cat one. Because you get on the highlights at the end of the weekend, don't you? But,
yeah, there's certainly some of that in there, and then there's that whole just judgment of whether he can go up and get 2 hands on the ball and whether he can't, and I think that there's some gray area there between, is he showboating and trying to showboat, or is he just unable to track it to that extent where he feels like he can get there? But I like his overall game for sure.
Okay, so everybody's talking about the guys at the top, so I don't really like to get you on to talk about the guys at the top, like the guys everybody's talking about, but we'll skim the stone across the pond and just bounce it across. So your number 1 guy, CD Lamb?
Yeah.
He's my number 1. We've got I think 2 with him, so we've got our first 2 the same.
Yeah. Nice.
I might know what I'm doing a little bit.
And you both had Hakeem Butler number 1 last year.
We did. Yes.
Yes,
we did.
We'll see what happens at that point.
Yeah.
So just quickly about CD Lamb, why he's your number 1.
Well, besides the fact that he has otherworldly hands and hand-eye coordination, and that he can win the ball against, getting hit, he can take the physical contact, and he's a very skilled runner after the catch, extremely skilled. He's an underrated route runner. He's someone that is fantastic with his releases. He's very patient as a route runner, and he can be creative with his releases, but also be able to run the routes in a timely manner. So he can give you a little bit of both, where he can work with the quarterback and say, look, I'm going to take my time here and have a very slow release, but be able to bait the defensive back and then be able to get open. So he does that. He works well back to the quarterback, very good boundary awareness. And then as a blocker, talk about a blocker. This is a guy who has his head on a swivel, who really understands how to, punch and to be able to get defenders pushed downfield. But at the same time, if he spots a safety, screaming into the area as he's blocking downfield and he's got an angle on the running back, he'll come off his block and take on that safety at the very last moment with a great angle. So there's a lot of awareness to his game, a lot of technical savvy, a lot of toughness and versatility. He can, he's not necessarily split end fast as the guy that you're going to have Ruggs. You're not going to have him stretch the field like that, but he can certainly get behind defenders with his 4.51 speed. But he's a guy that can probably play flanker and play slot extremely well. And, he's a guy who reminds me a little bit of Santonio Holmes from the Pittsburgh Steelers way back in the day, who, when Holmes was at his best, he's very difficult to play against because he was physical, also technically sound, and a demon in the open field.
Now, the first 2 guys I looked at was CD Lamb, and Jerry Jeudy was the first. So I looked at the top guys first. And the Jerry Jeudy's route running is incredible, but I did notice that the big difference I found with them was their hands. Like, to me, CD Lamb is a far natural catcher of the football than Jerry Jeudy is. Would it be fair to say that CD Lamb's he's in the Dante Pettis? Like, it just comes, it's not something he has to think about doing. He just he knows where his hands have to be. He knows how the ball's coming in. Where Jerry Jeudy's a little bit, to me, that a guy would spend more time on jug machine.
That's possible. I think that's certainly possible. I think that Lamb is definitely in a higher tier as a pass catcher, but I think that we're at that point of talking about a virtuoso versus a professional, and so we're kind of splitting hairs in that tier, and it's certainly fun to do. And I agree with you, but Judy's a guy that you don't see it as often because he's often, a lot of the questions about him is he going to be able to make plays against tight physical coverage? Because he's always open right now, and we don't see him, making a lot of those tight coverage plays. I know I had to dig for some from Henry Ruggs, but I saw some in a spring game years ago when he was a freshman in the Alabama spring game, where he's facing, some of the top defensive players in the SEC that were on his own team in a scrimmage situation, where he made some catches that were more impressive than anything I've seen on his SEC tape or on his tape in regular season games. And from that point, I was pretty sold on him and I actually have a couple of those plays, or at least one of those plays on my site. If you look up Jerry Jeudy on my site, you'll see a play of his where he goes up and wins the ball between 2 defenders on a route up the seam that requires an NFL level, like, elite type of adjustment, and it's a really nice play. So I'm sold on that. What I'm not really sold on with Jerry Jeudy is his acceleration. I mean, when you look at his acceleration, people look at him and go, oh my gosh, he's extraordinarily quick. He's got moves on moves and all of that. Well, he's got moves on moves because he's not very good of an accelerator. He's already figured out that for him to learn to really get separation, he has to be a terrific route runner, and he has to capitalize on his short area change of direction. But his acceleration is actually reserve level. So I wonder about, when I hear the Antonio Brown comparisons, I find that to be a little bit overboard with him, and maybe not looking at the numbers and looking at the film as well as they should, because when you watch him actually try and accelerate around the corner, linebackers can run him down. and that happens on a fairly regular basis. It's when people are head up over the top of him trying to come down and tackle him, where he can make people miss with the moves that he has, and they're excellent. But that, to me, he'd be great in the slot, maybe as a flanker. But the deep threat stuff's going to have to come off double moves and him turning defenders around with his excellent route running skills. And he'll probably be able to do that, but he may not be able to do that at the rate that he did in college. So to me, he may end up being more of a he could wind up being more of a high-end slot receiver in the league, as opposed to him being your number one primary option. I don't think he's that at all. But he's an excellent player, and he's, maybe a Reggie Wayne, Torrey Holt type of player who has another player opposite him who's equally or even better. He could rack up a lot of production for you in fantasy football, or in the slot, where again he can use a lot of that movement, that short area quickness to haul in a lot of catches. But if you're asking to be Antonio Brown, I think that comparison is off.
Is that a reason they don't have him doing punt returns, Matt? Like I love the punt return receivers.
Yeah, those are great. But yeah, there's that reason why they wouldn't do that with him.
Yeah, because he doesn't have that speed.
Yeah, but and probably because he'd waste a lot of space doing that. I mean, he certainly he's efficient with how he makes those movements, but I wonder if that really would be the best use. So you look at somebody like Jalen Reagor, who we would talk about maybe later, who's a guy who's equally fast and very efficient with how he moves downfield.
If he catches the ball
downhill, right?
The amount of balls that he drops on punt returns is not acceptable.
Right. Yeah. So then when you look at it, so from that perspective, yeah, when you're talking about the move, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. He's worked out where the defenses are going on punt returns way before I think they even know where they're going to, what area they're going to take up. But we'll skim the stone, keep going. T. Higgins, he's another of the big guys that I really like. How do you view him?
I think he's good. I mean, I think he's a good player. I think he can become a starter. He's someone that you're looking at him also to be a play action aided deep threat. He's someone that I think can come in right away and be a good flanker for the team. I think of Hakeem Nicks as a good example of someone. Mm-hmm. Hakeem Nicks was physical enough to get deep. He could work over the middle for you. He was very fluid, tough, versatile, but he wasn't necessarily a speedster, and he wasn't going to overwhelm you with his physical play, but physical play didn't disrupt him. And I think there's a difference. A guy like Calvin Johnson and Terrell Owens, those guys were physical and they could dictate their physicality on you. Whereas Hakeem Nicks is the type of guy that teams could try to jostle around and try and bully, and he just worked through it and just wasn't fazed by it. T. Higgins is that kind of player. He's that kind of player who's not fazed by it. Smart, very good, very focused, makes some really nice adjustments on the ball. I like him. And when he does drop the ball, or somebody gets into his head early on, like Ohio State did in the playoff game, he came right back. He rebounded and made some really nice plays in that game. So he didn't get completely out of his game. And that to me is a sign also of a mentally tough individual for his age. And that's a good sign for a wide receiver. You need to have that.
Well, in that game, he played on Akuda, who's the number one corner. And look, I think he had the better of him for the whole game. But in the end, when it came down to it, when they hit the red zone, mate, size matters. And he beat him. Just throw it up there, and Akuda couldn't stop it.
Yeah,
he's not that type of guy. So, but I did find that with him that he's a great hands catcher. But man, you got to bring the ball quicker into your body.
Sure.
Like a couple of times it gets just punched out, and guys in the pro, that's the first thing they're looking at these days. Just knock the ball out any way you can.
Yeah.
And it takes him far too long to bring it. It's almost to say, hey, caught it. Hey, photo. Okay, bring it in.
Yeah.
And you got to bring it straight to your body as soon as you catch it. That's one of the
that's a great point. That's a great point. And that's something that is improvable with his game. But it is one that you're right. If he doesn't adjust to that early enough, he could have some issues.
Okay, so we'll stop skimming the stones. We'll just go some other guys that I think are a little bit lower down. I don't know where you have them yet. As I said, AJ hasn't been nice enough to pass it on. Maybe it was because he forked out the money for it straight up. So maybe he's waiting for my half, Matt. Oh, I don't know. Who knows? But anyway,
I think we can arrange to get you one.
No, you're right, Matt. I know where he lives, Matt. UCF's Gabriel Davis is another guy that I really like. Again, 6'3", 212 pounds, excellent comebacks. He's actually quite deceiving in his speed. I think he's one of those other guys that it doesn't look like he's really running that fast, but if you look at the ground that he's actually covering, strong hand catcher. What else? Long strider. He's not a twitched up guy. Got the aggro about him. How did you rate him?
Yeah, I mean Davis was a fun player to watch for sure.
Yeah.
And when you look at his game overall, he was a guy that I think it comes down to that if you can get him in an offense that allows him to maximize his strengths and minimize his lack of acceleration, you're going to have a guy who can contribute and maybe even become a starter. Because like you said, well built. And the thing that you see is he has that strength. He has some good separation moves at the line of scrimmage. And I think he can be that possession receiver with a vertical game. So a guy who can give you a high number of catches like a Mike Williams might do, but also give you some vertical element off of play action or on passes where he's allowed to work up that acceleration over the intermediate range of the field without any sudden stops or starts necessary. Because if he has to reaccelerate, that's when things get a little bit difficult for him, because he has to use his quickness to his advantage, and he doesn't really have a great deep bend in and out of his breaks. So you want to see him really kind of use more speed breaks and snap his turns and do that, because he's someone that plucks the ball really well out of the air. And after the catch, he can be very difficult after the catch, but you want him on plays where, how would I best put it? You don't want him beating corner. You don't want to try and have him beat cornerbacks up the sideline on shorter routes. What you're going to want, he's going to move the chains in those situations, but defenders are going to recover and track him down. So he's better on routes breaking across the field. So where he can veer away from pursuit, build up to his top speed. And so if you see him, really develop those catch and pierce techniques, those abilities to catch the ball, tuck it in, and just turn straight downfield or across the field, he's going to be in a good situation because he can beat multiple defenders weaving around them or breaking through reaches when he's at full speed. And I think that's where he could be at his best. Think of him where, I think of him in situations running dig routes or the over routes and crossing routes, as well as skinny posts and post patterns. Those are the types of routes that I think you can see a lot of big plays from him. But if you have to ask him to be the big play guy running a hitch or running a comeback, he's going to catch the ball, but he's not going to get much after that. So, good player, room for growth, but he has some physical limitations where you may not look at him and say, undoubtedly he's going to become a primary receiver. You may look at him and say, okay, his upside is in a good offense, he could be a fantasy factor. But if they're leaning on him to be the man in an offense, he may not be as much of a fantasy factor as you would expect.
Yeah, well, they're the sort of the guys we're talking about now. These aren't number one guys. These are complementary wide receivers. One thing I did like about him is the fact that when he's tracking the ball, some receivers have a really good instinct of where their opponent is in relation to where they are, even though they're not looking at their opponent. And he was one of those guys. I felt that he had a really good understanding of the distance, exactly where his opponent was on a ball when he's tracking across his shoulder.
Yeah, very true.
Okay, so we'll go to another guy that you brought up that we were going to bring up, and that's if he could catch the ball on punt return, on punt returns would be better, and that's Jalen Rager. And he's getting like a heap of talk, isn't he?
He is,
because it's speed. People love speed.
Yeah.
So where do you have him? Because the biggest problem I had with him with his hands.
So I had Rager pretty high, actually. I had him 10th on my board. Yep. Overall. I do have him on the border of being an instant starter. I think that he's a guy who has potential to play every position. You could put him at split end and he could run away from you there, but he has the open field ability of a flanker and he has those slots. I think he can play the potential to play in the slot. I mean, kind of reminds me of a mix of Brandon Cooks and Randall Cobb in terms of his ability to go up and win the ball. I think he got better as the years went along with his hands, being able to go up and win it. And I think that he's a tough player. He's someone that can play through some injury, who can come back onto the field and be able to function reasonably well. I liked what he was able to do with some of his route skills. So yeah, I mean, he's a player that I look at and I feel like overall he could wind up being a productive guy. May not be the primary guy for you, but he's certainly someone that is capable of giving you, high-end production. And I think that where his hands can get better, I think more than anything, is how he frames them on chest-high targets. What happens to him is that he uses a lot of the underhand. Exactly. A lot of the underhand framing at the chest-high targets, so he has to be more active. Exactly.
I actually wrote down here, don't throw the ball at the numbers or above, like the top of the number, because it confuses them. It does. Put it here, down here. Don't throw it here, because he doesn't catch it properly.
There's 15 receivers in this class probably who have the same problem. It's a very common problem, is that when if it's at the navel or below, they know what to do. If it's at the head level and above, they know what to do. But if it's at the numbers, they get confused, and it may be different every time. And it might
he catches it like a running back. Yeah. Like a running back will catch it, because they're not natural catchers, a lot of them. Yeah. He'll catch it like that. I'm thinking, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah. Van Jefferson does the same thing over the middle on those number high balls, and that's
That's it. You keep talking him down, man. That's helping me out. I'm going to back him. But no, that's what I wrote down here. I'm glad that I'm picking up what you're seeing too. Just the inconsistency, but he's one of these guys I don't think was really helped by his quarterback. The amount of times that you see some of these wide receivers are wide open, and I don't know why the quarterback doesn't see him, but I said the quarterback was like a one-eyed pirate with cataracts at times.
So you're talking about my future and my retirement, my pre-retirement days with the RSP, hopefully 10, 15 years from now.
The one
I might have a cane at this point too. So there we go.
Hey,
or peg leg.
Well, I think your wife's pretty good with the power saw, mate. So I think you'd be safe.
But if you guys keep sending me Tim Tams, I might have to have one of the legs chopped off at this rate.
There we go, Matt. I was going to ask you that question. I was going to leave it till the end, but we'll just quickly jump off. I just want to talk a couple more of these guys before we let you go, because you're always great with giving up your time. But I think I sent you, was it 6 different flavors of Tim Tams?
Yeah.
Best and worst.
The cinnamon, I remember, or not the cinnamon, the caramel version were really good.
Nice.
Okay.
I really like that. I'm trying to remember the ones that I really.
I think I put peppermint in there. Peppermint's one of those things that people are.
I love
peppermint.
Like peppermint? I do. It was the mint chocolate. I think it was the one that
mint chocolate.
Mint chocolate. Yeah, I really like those, but at the same time, they do induce a little bit of heartburn for people.
Okay.
That I've heard that mint and chocolate can do that as a combination. I myself didn't experience that, but but certainly I could see where that that went downhill. I don't think there was one I really didn't like that was my least favorite, because I really enjoyed those. Those were my favorite kind. So
you did share them though. They weren't just for you. You understand?
Oh, no, I did absolutely sure. So if I didn't, I might actually have a peg leg at this point. So.
Now, one other guy, because I'll get you to talk about guys that you like that are sort of in the middle sort of tiers, or even people that everybody's talking about that you don't agree with, or some people that no one's talking about.
We can get through your list, by the way. So if we're taking more time, get through your list.
Sure.
We'll finish
that's great, Matt. Yeah. Kendrick Rogers out of Texas A&M. Like, he's had a couple of seasons now of injuries that have sort of derailed him a little bit. And he's played through them, which is a compliment to him, because he wants to play football. I put him down as an excellent development player. How do you say? I think he's got tons of potential, but his route tree's small. He's still got a bit of work on his technique to get separation. I find he has a really good understanding of the defenses. Large catch radius, strong hands, dependable, powerful after the catch, and he runs. He's one of these guys that runs like a running back once he's got the ball. Like, he runs with intent instead of just, I'll get some yards, and if I get tackled, I get brought down. But hey, I got the catch and I got 3 extra yards. Great. He doesn't run like that. He runs like, I'm getting every yard I can out of this. How did you see him?
Well, that's a good question, because while I've watched some of him, I didn't get enough viewings of him to include him in the RSP this time. So I'm hoping to get a little bit more out of him for the post draft. But I agree with you. I'm a big player. Certainly someone who can go up and win the ball. Physical after the catch. I agree with all of those points. What I didn't get to see enough of to feel comfortable rating him at this time was his route running. Route running and releases, and because that's so much of what receivers do, that I just refrained from actually even scoring him at this point, because I needed more time to look up Texas A&M games and really go through his portfolio more than I did.
Yeah, I must admit, look, I have to base that off basically one game in 2000. I think 2009. I didn't even write down the year, actually. It might even be 2018. Could be 2017, Matt. Who the hell knows?
I know you look for those big guys first. So, when you picked him, I wanted to smile. I was like, yeah, there it goes. All right.
Just a sucker. I'm just a sucker for him. So,
you and Sigmund Bloom with the Brandon Marshall types. See, that's what it is. Sigmund loves the Brandon Marshall types as well.
Yeah. I'm still trying to get over Dorial Green Beckham. I'm still trying to get over. I think I find, Matt, that the guys that I miss on, it usually comes down to not so much the skill level, it's the mindset that screws them over.
Right.
Yeah.
And we can listen to what they say about how much they want to play football, but you're saying what you need to say, but we don't really know. And that's the one side of it we don't really know, isn't it?
That's right.
And I think Dorial Green Beckham,
that's where you're missing
straight in there.
And if that's where you're missing, then there could be a lot worse places than you're missing than the fact that you miss something that you can't ascertain because you don't get a chance to interview them, and you don't have an idea, and you don't have an idea of what teams actually know about those guys or not. So
yeah. Well, I have to bring up, I'm just going to say his name and then I'll move on. Preston Williams. That's all I'm going to say. We spoke about Preston Williams he was my number 2. Receiver coming out last year. I think
he was 8 for me. So
and we were concerned about him moving to Miami.
It's true. We said year 2. We said what we were saying is year 2 was the year that we needed to watch for, not the first year. When he got comfortable and he started to have that success, how was he going to be? So we're going to see.
Oh my God, we've seen the success now, haven't we? Oh my God.
Yeah,
it's probably just what he needs is more time off the football field this year, isn't it? More time away from the facility.
Lots to do in Miami.
Yeah. But he was. It's not. I didn't find him a surprise, but it was.
Yeah.
What he showed us was fantastic first year up, and
for sure.
Just quietly, mate. It's amazing how many people don't talk about someone and then they watch him and go, "Hey, I was all over this bloke." Yeah. Because outside of you and me, man, I don't think I heard anybody talk about him at all. Full stop.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's how it goes. And that's the nature of this business sometimes. So
yes.
Yeah.
Anybody that you want to bring up, Matt, that people aren't talking about that we probably should?
Yeah, I'll try and name a few quickly.
Yeah.
Quintez Cephas out of Wisconsin.
Yep.
I'm big fan of Quintez Cephas's game. Very physical. Jeffrey Okudah said he was the best receiver that he faced in his career. So did the other Ohio State cornerback. And when you watch him just dominate people, he's really good with his hands at the top of his stems, goes back and wins the ball. He's incredible at winning the football, very physical, but also very athletic and dynamic in terms of adjusting his body. Difficult after the catch to deal with because outside linebackers can hit him in the side and they get shoved away. So he's a guy who can play deep, and he had a poor 40 in the combine. But one of the things that I was talking about after the combine is that he probably was going to run more in the 4.55 range. He ran a 4.56 at his pro day, and you could see the rest of his metrics at the combine were very strong. So it was more fitting. That 40 time was more fitting of him. I think Devin Duvernay gets a little overlooked.
Oh, sorry. I was just to say with Cephas, I found Matt his concentration on the ball was probably almost like the best in this class.
Oh yeah, absolutely was.
Mate, especially under like really tight coverage. It's seriously, he's not even concerned that the guy's draping all over him.
Yeah, there's a catch that he makes against a Michigan State player in the end zone, where it's a lucky catch, but it's indicative of what he does with so many other plays, where the ball literally bounces off of him at 3 different points while he's being wrapped, and he still makes the play with one hand. And it's that type of concentration that's fantastic. So yeah, there's him.
And the fact I really like, he can change what shoulder he tracks the ball over.
Yes.
He'll look, and then he'll realize that this is not the shoulder I should be tracking. It's not where it's meant to be.
Yes.
And he'll swap shoulders without losing the ball.
Yeah, he has terrific tracking, and that's such an underrated skill. I mean, Sammy Coates is an example of a player who couldn't do that, who had incredible athletic ability, but can't track the football. And one of the scouts I know said, I really don't understand how people miss this one about him, because really all you had to do was this one simple exercise of throwing the ball over his head with him not looking, and watch him do that like 10, 15 yards down the field and see if he could even find the ball. And I would have bet like $1 million that he wouldn't have found the football. And nobody bothered to do simple. There were probably a lot of teams that didn't bother even to do that simple of an exercise, which is interesting. He was
probably better off not even tracking the ball, just looking forward and just putting his hands out and hoping that the ball landed in his hands.
I think that's what he did a lot of the time. So it's interesting because the Steelers were the ones that took him, and they have such a great reputation with Emmanuel Sanders and and Antonio Brown and some of the players that they've picked over, Juju Smith-Schuster. They've picked a lot of good receivers over the years, but that was a clunker out of the ones that they did pick.
Yeah. Anybody else? Sorry, you were talking about someone else, Matt.
Devin Duvernay out of Texas. A lot of people look at him as a running back who can actually play, who can actually catch. But he's an interesting player to me because he is such a good pass catcher. I think his route running is a little better than advertised. I think he's very good off the line of scrimmage with his hands. And he's the type of player that I could see him playing flanker if you need him to, and maybe even split end because he has that high end speed and acceleration. But he's also a guy that if you want to use him in the slot or as a running back, because he was a former running back and they used him on some plays, even at Texas out of the backfield, imagine a team that decided, let's use him in a Danny Woodhead type of role where we could use him, like Danny Woodhead or Austin Eckler a little bit, maybe not as much between the tackles as a runner, but occasionally, but then you can move him outside and get good matchups as a deep threat, but then also put him in the backfield and have him match up against a linebacker, on some plays where kind of how even like the Chiefs did with Tyreek Hill to an extent, where they would do that. They'd run like some of these wheel routes and bullet routes up the rail or up the flat, and they'd get a matchup against a safety or linebacker. There was a complete mismatch. So Duvernay was another guy that certainly was interesting to me from that respect.
Yeah, mate, speed. If you get him open a little bit, the dude's gone.
Yeah.
Like he's got some shit, and he's a running back. He's got great contact balance.
Yeah.
But he got Michael Warren, the running back out of Cincinnati, just sheer speed. They're almost the same player in different positions.
Yeah.
But yeah, is Duvernay like a bit of a one-trick pony?
I don't think so. I honestly think that he can.
It's a good trick.
Yeah,
Speed's a good trick. Yeah.
Speed's a good trick. It is, but I think he actually is a better route runner than I think people realize. I think he's better off the line of scrimmage against press coverage, and I think that he's going to show that. And I think he'll end up growing into being more. I think people pegged him as a running back who can catch. I actually think he's a wide receiver who can play a little bit of running back. And it's a subtle difference, but I think it's going to make all the difference for his career.
He doesn't catch the ball anything like a running back, though, does he, Matt? He catches it like a wide receiver.
He only dropped his first pass he ever dropped was midway through his senior year.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not a bad effort. It's not bad at all,
not
is it? Okay. What about Michael Pittman out of USC?
He grew on me. I actually like him. He's very physical at the catch point, or capable of taking physical contact at the catch point. He's a perimeter receiver. So you think of him in the way of like Mike Williams, again, like the Chargers. He's someone that can give you some big plays down the field.
Big guy.
Yeah. He's quick. he's a quick guy. He's very quick in and out of some breaks that underneath. He runs a lot of routes that break inside in the short and intermediate range that work open for him. I don't think he's very good after the catch, though. He's one of those guys that once he catches the ball, he gets wrapped up pretty quickly. He's not like his dad, who was a big physical running back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Arizona Cardinals early in his career. But he has that quickness, and if he can somehow learn to break the first tackle or figure out ways to be able to do that, he could be even more dangerous. But he's a player more than anything that you can see being that intermediate to deep option off play action passes, work in the middle of the field, kind of like a better version of Gabriel Davis in terms of what he can offer, in terms of the types of things that they ask him to do, and with a little bit more speed and quickness.
A guy you were talking about with Cecil the other day, Brandon Ayuk, which doesn't seem like an overly huge fan of, or not in the context of how people are sort of talking him up at the moment.
Yeah. There are a lot of people who really think this is a top 5 receiver who can, because he runs a lot of nice double moves and can get open downfield, and his stats stack up to being a very big play threat, good yards after the catch player, excellent return specialist, very good in tight traffic and patient and all of that. But he doesn't get off press coverage very well. He's not someone that uses his hands extremely well. He's going to need a lot of work against physical play. He's at his best running routes against defenders who play off of him, whether it's zone or off man-to-man. And when that happens, he can use his footwork and use some of his manipulation skills as a route runner to win. But when they play him tight and physical, doesn't work out as well for him at this stage, because he doesn't show the skills at this point. Same thing too is that while he's shown in clutch moments to use his hands correctly when it comes to framing the ball, as you so elegantly displayed earlier in the program. Ayuk doesn't always do that, in the middle, beginning in the middle pages parts of the game. In the clutch moments, he seems to realize he has to do that, and he does it well. So that's a good sign for him, but I think he needs a little bit more time. Like this year, I think that if he comes into a team and they use him as their second or third receiver, and they have 2 good receivers on the field already, he could be very productive for a rookie. But if they're asking him to be the guy, like if he came to Buffalo and they said, listen, Stephon Diggs gets hurt and John Brown isn't here, you're going to have to be the man. Well, good luck with that. That's probably not going to be great. But maybe if you use him in those situations off of double moves with a guy like Josh Allen, he could have some big games for you. Maybe not every week if Stephon Diggs and John Brown are still there. Yeah,
that was really good. Like we're talking about the way that you catch the ball. I found that a lot of his drops were short passes with a little bit of heat on them, because it's sort of like I don't know how I should be catching the ball.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly it.
Instead of just bang in the hand, CD Lamb, those Dante Pettis, who we both as a hand catcher, looks like he doesn't have time to think. Like deeper balls, he has time to think about where my hands are going to be. Shorter, quicker throws, he's like, I don't have that. My brain can't process to my hands where to put them.
He's not reacting to the speed of instinct. That's what Dan Hatman often would talk about with his scouting academy. It's a good phrase to use for that. He's not reacting to the speed of instinct. Yeah.
So someone in the top 10 that you've got, Matt, that we haven't spoke about now?
Sure. Laviska Shenault, the Colorado receiver, 6 feet, 227 pounds.
Why are people down on him? I don't get it.
I don't really get it either, but I understand. It's like how I feel about Jordan Love, the quarterback. I get it, but I don't get it. I heard you. You heard me on with Sigmund talk about him in the sandwich. Okay.
Oh man, I was thinking that is a really good analogy, and I love analogies.
Well, I appreciate that.
And my analogy with him was sort of like, I'm thinking, he's a bit like the guy, like you see a guy go out and buy a flash car, and then you see him on Facebook, he's getting all these likes, he's doing all this stuff, and you go, mate, that's how I've missed out on that. I'm going to go and get one of those. But you go and get the car without looking what's underneath the bonnet. You're just buying the skin.
Right.
Because you feel you've missed out on it. Like people missed out on Patrick Mahomes, which was the comp you were saying. And then you find out the bloody gearbox breaks down. It's not exactly, the interior is not what you thought it was be. It's just been put together with a bit of hand stitching, stuff like that. Because you just wanted the look because you felt you missed out, and this other guy's getting all these likes, and you want all the likes on Facebook.
Yeah, you sit in it for a long ride, and you get up, and you realize that the seat part of the cushion part of the seat looks like it's been through a stabbing or something,
Yeah. Like, you can feel the spring.
It's like the chair I'm sitting in right now. It's comfortable, but it's like, okay,
that was good. I love your analogy. I love a good analogy.
Yeah, so I appreciate that, but and I mean, then I came downstairs and told my wife that I just ripped this poor young man, and I felt sorry for the way that I kind of went off on this guy and how I wrote about it.
He's going to make his millions. Don't worry about it, man.
Yeah, exactly. He'll be all right, and hopefully he'll have a good career. But you look at a guy like Shenault, and I think the problem is that people see all the injuries. He has a shoulder injury that he had the hernia injury. He ran his 40 with a hernia. I mean, like, he waited for the surgery and he still delivered, what was it, a 4.58 40, and he ran it with basically a sports hernia. So I mean, he's faster than that. He's a much better route runner than people realize.
I used to train with a guy that used to push his hernia back in after doing certain exercises.
Yeah. My wife has a crazy uncle who showed us his and how he pushed his in, and we were like, okay, really? Like, this is fun family reunion items that go on here. But yeah, she has another that looks exactly like Snoop Dogg, to be honest with you. Yeah, he looks exactly, he could play a body double for Snoop Dogg. It's pretty funny. He also caught a bass for the kids, and they put it in a fish tank. So there you go. And that's not where you put them. So those were funny uncle stories back in the day.
Everybody's got one.
Yeah, everybody's got one. I think she's got 3. I love them, but she's got 3. So I think I've probably got 4. So I probably got them beat. But anyway, Shenault with the 4.58 40, probably faster than that. Better route runner than people expect. Very good hands catcher. The big thing is whether he stays healthy, and I think people are worried about that. But at the same time, they're pounding him into the line, and he's not going to, as long as they don't make him into trying to be a gadget like Cordero Patterson, or he doesn't have learning issues like Cordero Patterson did, because Cordero Patterson was a terrific athlete, terrific football player when he knew exactly what he needed to do and rehearsed it over and over and over again. But the problem with professional football is that you can't do that. In professional football, you have to know the game plan. You need to be able to translate it onto the field. And when they show you something in class, you need to be able to be ready for it and have it translate quickly when you practice, and you get it within a couple of reps. And Cordero Patterson has never been that player. That's why that Bill Belichick said with a lot of bravado 2 years ago, I'm going to make Cordero Patterson the player that he was always supposed to be. And then they promptly got rid of him after a year because they realized that really what he might best be is a running back, as opposed to being a wide receiver. And, Bill thought he could do that. And even the great Bill Belichick, his bravado didn't quite work out with Cordero Patterson because of those limitations. Unless Chenault has that kind of limitation, and there's no signs that he does, or that he's just a broken down player, which I don't think he is either. I think you wind up with a player who could give you that, give you that type of production that you're looking for from a number one receiver and be a beastly good receiver in terms of after the catch, route running at every level of the field. And I really don't get why people are scared off of him, overall.
Is it because he looks like a running back? And that's a comp I hear because he looks like so you're going to knock a guy because he's built like a running back, really?
Well,
like, isn't it in a physical game of football? Like he can do everything else. I don't think he's a deep guy.
Yeah,
I don't think that's his best. That's where his best football is. You might disagree, Matt, but mate, it's a physical game. This is what you want. You want guys that are physical after the catch. I reckon he's a very good route runner.
Yeah.
And then he's physical. Like, mate, what more do you want?
Yeah, I guess they want 3 or 4 more inches of height on him. I guess that's probably what they want. But to me, it's like
6'2". Is that right? Have I got that right? Is he 6'2"?
If he's 6'2", I thought I had him at 6 feet, but I might have put it
6
down.
feet. I might be wrong because
I got to double check that too.
Yeah,
I'll double check that too.
No,
if he's 6'2", it makes perfect sense. And if it's 6'2", then I would just say what the problem is that they're looking at whatever jersey number he has and how he filled it out, and they're basing that because it's funny. You can look at a guy who wears like a single digit jersey number and he looks like a wide receiver, but then if you give him the number 27 and put him in a backfield, they go, he's built like a running back, because people, it's the visual trick that people have.
Do you find that too, Matt? Just a little bit off. When you watch games, is that players look different? This is going to sound really weird. Players look different depending on what color jersey they're wearing.
No doubt.
What angle the camera's at. Like you watch some guy go, he's rubbish. Like he looks slow, and then he puts a brighter color on, and you go, is he just playing better today, or is it because the camera's in a different spot and he's wearing a different color jersey?
Oh, that's all true. I think that's all true. And I know it sounds weird, but it's not a weird question at all. I think that's an under discussed one. I think it's a great question that I've never had anyone ask me, but I think I cope with all the time, which is you look at players and you're like, okay, well, I don't know what to think because, you see him in this jersey and over the years, you'll see him in a pro jersey and you'll go, wait a minute, this guy doesn't look like the dumpy kind of physical guy that, he doesn't look like a younger version of me on the field right now. He actually looks like he's in shape, or this guy, or you watch another guy and you realize, I didn't realize how sculpted this guy was, or I didn't realize, it all kind of, or how small the guy was. Oftentimes that's what it is you'll see a guy like, a good example is Jawan Jennings, a guy that I really like, who's a wide receiver out of Tennessee.
Glad to support him out, Matt.
See, there you go.
Yeah.
So Jawan Jennings is a very physical player. Apparently Pro Football Focus graded him as the guy with the most yards after contact of any receiver. And that stands up on tape, because when I heard that, I was laughing because I was like, he always seems to break a tackle. He always seems to push pile. He's very physical. If you want a blocker in his best moments, he's by far the best blocker in this class. Watch him against BYU. You can find a cut up of him against BYU, and you're going to watch him take on linebackers as a lead blocker and just do an incredible job. But he's a guy who, when you watch him at first, you're thinking he's got to be like 225. He's got to weigh 215, 225. Then he came to the Senior Bowl and they had the weigh-in, and he looked like this pencil thin, wiry, muscled guy, and he was like 208 pounds. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm comparing this guy to Brandon Marshall and Anquan Bolden, and now he's like more like Hines Ward size, more than anything. He's added weight from between that month to the combine. He ended up at 215 or 218 pounds, somewhere around that range. So he may end up at that point because he had room to add. But when you watched him on the field and the way he played, the physicality that he showed, and maybe also what he wore, I don't know, just the way his uniform fit him, he looked like a bigger guy, you know.
And in college, but they've got like, it's almost like they've got a different color every week.
Yeah,
I don't know what the hell's going on.
They do. Like Oregon needs to just stop. I don't know what's going on. Actually, the team that needs to stop, Oregon's fine. They have the great combinations. I lied. They're great.
Yeah.
They're the example. I'll tell you the team that needs to stop is Michigan State. Michigan State decided to try and copy that, and it was like your kid with bad color sense and a Play-Doh and a bunch of Play-Doh. And
Bloody Nike.
The jerseys were horrible. I was watching Darryl Stewart, and I literally commented on Twitter. I was like, "What on earth is this?" Like, I'm not a fashion expert by any stretch of the imagination, but how could an organization like use these jerseys and like actually think that people were going to find those like worthwhile? They actually look like practice jerseys that didn't come out right, and they just decided to use them anyway.
I wish Boise State would stop wearing blue at home.
Oh, you know they're doing that on purpose. Oh my god! All they need is like a 5'5" running back who's like 180 pounds, ultra quick, and have him all in blue, and nobody can find him until he's like 50 yards down the field. That's what they're trying to get.
Yeah, I don't know why the punt returner doesn't lie on the ground more.
And then just pop up like he's a guerrilla warrior or something, who's like guys who have like the military with the hay field or the wheat in their helmet, and they're all covered up, and they pop out of the ground with their gun. It's like
I'm looking at mate. I don't know if it affects color blindness having the same color turf and the same color uniform. I have no idea, because I know with the color rush uniforms when they had, I think, who was it? Was
red
it
and green?
The
red and green, the Giants, the Jets, and
yeah.
I have a friend who's colorblind, and he didn't know
Gene
what the hell was going on.
Gene Bramwell on the Audible's colorblind, so he's like, we'll be driving at night, and he'll be like, just tell me if it's red or if it's red or green. At this point, I usually can see it, but on these lights, you're gonna have to tell me red or green. When we were driving through, when we were at the Senior Bowl, he told me that one day. But there's times I used to make charts with red and green. And he go, dude, you got to just stop that. I can't even see that stuff. You realize that colorblind people, and I'm like, yeah, I got to stop. Okay.
So that where'd you have Jennings rated as a? Because I found he's another one that has to work on his hands.
Yeah,
like the gap between his hands is just too wide.
That's right,
far too wide. And it's not just now and then. It's like nearly all the time.
Yes. And it's sad because he makes some really tough catches. Like he'll make some plays and you're just like, wow, that's such a physical play. But if he can ride his hands, I think he could wind up being a contributor on the field. But right now I have him on the borderline, again, on the cusp of being a rotational starter and a contributor. And a lot of it also has to do with how quick he is. I think he's quick enough based on what I've seen on the field. He often makes first man miss, and he's great at transitioning downfield after the catch. But to me, he's 19th on my board. He reminds me of, if you remember Michael Clayton out of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the guy who had one good year. He had like one great year, and he literally like nearly had the best. And before Anquan Bolden came along, he had the best rookie year of any rookie receiver ever. And then he promptly never heard from him again. But he was a former LSU receiver who was pretty dynamic, even though he wasn't fast. And I think Jennings reminds me a lot of that player.
All right, well, just two more, Matt. Is that
sure? I got time. Okay. We're good. If you want to do more, we can do more.
Oh, excellent. KJ Hamler out of Penn State.
Yeah,
the human joystick.
Yes.
How do you see? I've just pulled him up, so I'll let you talk about him, and then I'll give me an opportunity to read what
you wrote. Yeah,
okay. I'm a terrible note taker, Matt. I'm a tradie. I'm not a note taker.
Can you read what you write, or is your writing so bad that you can't read what you write?
He has a lot of trouble reading it back.
I just, it's the way that I lay it out is not good. I should do it and then reread it and then put it into a point form, so it becomes like you just read it like a paragraph about the guy.
Gotcha.
My notes are sort of like, they're all over the place. They could be you know.
Oh, those are readable. See, like
they're readable. Yeah.
You can't even read my writing. It's like if I didn't have a typewriter, it would look like
frustrated doctor.
Yeah, or yes, yeah, exactly, or like some new like sort of like symbolism oriented like language that's out of symbols, but
Cam
definitely
Newton
not
style.
an Asian language.
Cam Newton style on his tweets.
Yeah. Oh, Cam Newton's probably way better than what mine looks like. So I haven't seen that, but Hamler certainly probably one of the two players in this class who I think is the most dangerous when it comes to how they apply their speed, quickness, and vision. He's just fantastic in the open field and also in traffic. Really, he's very capable of being able to make the plays in the tight zones. He's not afraid of being able to make those plays against physical contact. You don't want him there all the time because he's a small guy, but at the same time, when you need to put him out there, I think he can make some selected plays in that regard. I think he's a player that needs to get better against patient and physical cornerbacks. So he's someone that can get forced off his game on short and intermediate routes when they make him work hard at alternating the pace and depth of his route. So he's going to have to get better at playing and play out at, really refining his routes and anticipating what cornerbacks are trying to do against him. But
I find that
he'd
rather catch the ball to his body, and he'd actually jump to catch the ball to his body than actually just take it in front of his face.
And I think
sorry, Matt, go.
No, you go ahead. I interrupted.
No,
you.
I was just going to say there was a lot of occasions I saw that he was running, and instead of just staying on the ground and taking the ball out of the air, he'd actually jump, catch it, and take it against his body, and then keep moving. And I don't think you can do that in the pros. That's not going to work.
That's a little harder to do. A lot of players do leap for the ball at this level of the game that they have to adjust at, and so that certainly can be an issue. For me, what was interesting about him is even though that may be a part of his game, I also thought he was one of the best tracker and catcher of low throws in this class in tight quarters. He was someone that was really good at using his hands in position to really get underneath the throw or to be able to catch it in an more active position with his hands away from the ball, so that he could win the ball against, throws at his hips, knees, and shins with that overhand technique that a lot of receivers wouldn't use in those scenarios. But, at the same time, I think that while the hand-eye coordination is an asset of his game, and he tracks the ball over his head well, he tracks the ball on the bounce well as a return specialist. You're right. If he's catching the ball too often where he's jumping, I didn't see that, to be honest.
Okay.
But if that was something that he was doing too often from your notes, then that's something that is definitely has to be taken into note.
I don't know if he did it a lot, Matt, but there was just a couple of occasions where I noticed it more how many body catches he was taking instead of taking the ball. He might just catch it out in front. And then I saw him do that a couple of times. Think, mate, is he just not confident enough to catch the ball on certain occasions with his hands? And I found him more quick than fast. Would that be fair?
I think I would say that it's fair to say that he's quicker than fast, but I would say if that's the case, then he is like a deer quick, because he's pretty darn fast. Okay. So if he's quicker than fast, that's downright scary.
Like long speed. Do you think I find his initial speed looks a lot faster than his long speed. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. But I think that's the thing. That's kind of my point, is that that his acceleration and his short area quickness is incredible. And I think what you'll find is that because I think the long speed's competent. I bet he runs in the 4.4s, in the 40, maybe even the high 4.3s. But I bet if he actually participated in the combine and the other drills, you would have seen off the charts quickness with him.
Okay, another guy everyone's been talking about, and that's Brian Edwards. Like the first thing I wrote down about him, mate, he's the most physical receiver in this class, I reckon.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
I love him. He's a player that I think could start right away. I know there are a lot of people that say he drops the ball a lot. It seemed to me when I watched him in his final year, I really didn't see him drop the ball a lot. So I was, but then again, I didn't see Hakeem Butler drop the ball a lot his final year. And a lot of people had issues with him not being able to catch the ball during his earlier parts of his career. So I saw that there were some drops with his game, in the previous seasons, but he's someone that, he makes some of the toughest catches you'll see. He's very physical. Like you said, he's someone that has power and skill to use his leverage. I thought he was a decent route runner. Certainly skilled after the catch, even making people miss.
I wrote that down, Matt. Yeah, after the catch, mate. And he's yards after the catch is probably one of the best in this class.
Yeah. If you remember a receiver by the name of Javon Walker, who was with the Green Bay Packers, and he kind of had a shorter career because I think there were certain things going on with him off the field and maybe emotionally in his career that just kind of caused him to not be able to sustain playing football at a high level. And one of those things was that there's unfortunate shooting that killed a Broncos cornerback who I don't remember by his name. He was a cornerback who came out of Oklahoma State, and there's a shooting and he was there. Like he witnessed it, and it led to a lot of emotional problems for him down the line. But he was an excellent young receiver who played at Green Bay and had some really strong years with Brett Favre, and then just never really built on that. But I think Edwards is that kind of player. So if anybody is out there listening who is a Packers fan and aware of Javon Walker, or you just look him up and watch some of his work, you'll see what I mean.
Yeah, I had what did I have for him? He's got really sharp hands. He's a crisp. You can hear the sound of the ball hitting, like it's just a beautiful sound. I said physical at the line. He's quick to react to the change of direction by the corners, and he's very quick to, as soon as the corner makes his move, he's very quick to react to change his direction. I had speed to take it after the yak guy. Excellent at anything that's sort of thrown outside of his frame as well, Matt.
Yeah.
And his quarterback, I just wrote his quarterback sucked. Like his inaccuracy was terrible. I don't know who the quarterback at South Carolina was.
Bentley, I think.
Bentley?
Yeah, I think that was his last name.
But his inaccurate throwing was made up by the fact that Brian Edwards can catch really well outside of his frame.
Yeah. So I already realized it's been a long time coming, but the next time I can finally get RSP film rooms up and running where I do shows and have guests, I definitely need to have you on so that we can do wide receiver. Man. We can do some wide receiver talk. I think that'd be a lot of fun. Yeah,
that'd be great, Matt. So is there anybody else, mate? We've kept you this has been going for over an hour and a half. You've been wonderful with your time.
Well, I look forward to doing this show with you guys. You guys are so knowledgeable, and it's a lot of fun to get a chance to just to go back. You can't shut AJ
up, can you?
Well, I've been watching a lot of IDP guys, so
yeah, AJ's IDP.
That's my excuse.
That's how it goes.
I love the glory. I love the glory, man. I love offense.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
I must say, a guy I wasn't very high on last year was DK Metcalf, and he was a very polarizing player. And a lot of the success or failure of these guys does sometimes fall to the GM and scouting departments of teams, and sometimes they hit and sometimes they miss. Sometimes they try and do square peg round hole and it doesn't come off. But a guy who's sort of equally polarizing, I think, this year is Henry Ruggs, and I'd be interested to get your take on him and where you think he might sort of be a good fit.
Yeah, it's interesting that he's so polarizing, and I think it's because it's hard to find tape of him where he makes those difficult plays that physical players make. Mm-hmm. So what they get scared about when they see an extremely fast guy is, oh, he can't catch the ball unless he's like running away from people. He can't catch the ball in that tight physical arena, and he can. So it takes a bit of digging. You got to look through a lot of tape to find these instances, but he can do it. So the guy that he reminds me of, I mean, certainly Ted Ginn is the guy everybody's afraid he's going to be, which is the drafted too early, may have a long career, may have a lot of big plays and some big weeks, but you can't count on him week in and week out. Ted Ginn's on that low end of his expectation, and if he really fails, I can see where that's the worst case scenario. Tyreek Hill is the area that's polarizing, where everybody says he could be the next Tyreek Hill, and I think that's a little too high. Like, definitely don't think he's Ted Ginn. I definitely don't think he's Tyreek Hill at this point, but a player that I think he could become, who's closer to Tyreek Hill than Ted Ginn, is an older player by the name of Santana Moss, who played for the New York Jets and the Washington Redskins. And he was a very physical player at the catch point with a lot of speed, came out of the University of Miami, skilled punt returner, skilled after the catch, but he played well with the ball in the air, and he had excellent leaping ability to win the ball, and he timed it extremely well. And I think Henry Ruggs does the same thing. Maybe not quite as good as Santana Moss at this point, or at the point Santana Moss came out. And if Santana Moss was in the league right now, he was like about 10 years ahead of his time in terms of where he should have really been in the league. Because if he was in the league right now, I think people would have been talking about him in the way people talk about Tyreek Hill.
Maybe not at Washington still, though.
Yeah, maybe not at Washington. But even, but at the same time, it's one of those situations for sure where this is a skilled speedster. He's not a one-trick pony. He's not a Marquise Goodwin, who, by the way, I talked about Marquise Goodwin at one point, and he said, I'll show you. Like, he actually came on Twitter and told me, and here's the thing that I always think that's kind of funny is when a young man decides that he's going to come on Twitter and like talk to me about like that he's going to prove me wrong about something I say. And it very rarely happens. There's two players who've done that, Marquise Lee and Marquise Goodwin. And I'm like, I'm rooting for them. I want them to do well. But if you're spending more time, if you're spending time on Twitter talking about how that you're going to show me that you can do more than what I've shown on tape, I'm going to say good luck to you and everything. But at the same time, part of me is like, dude, you're really worried about me? Like, I mean,
he's obviously looking at all the analysts, aren't they, Matt?
Yeah, focus on your own thing. I mean, So
okay, Matt, mate, deep ball. You're going back. You've got a good arm. You're probably more of a pocket passer. Would that be fair to say, mate? You get outside the pocket? Would you be a pocket passer, or would you sort of like to get outside? You got a bit of a turn of speed about you if you're a quarterback? If I was a quarterback? If I was a quarterback, I'd probably be more of a guy who worked outside the pocket. Oh, okay. So you've got outside the pocket. Yeah. You're going to throw it across your body. I'll give you that too now. Okay. I'd probably be like Joe Burrow. I probably wouldn't have quite the arm. I could move around well enough. Okay. Okay. So you're going deep. Yeah. Give us a deep guy. Give us someone deep. Okay. So someone that might be a 6th round pick in a rookie draft. Who can? Because I've got one here. Okay. I'll give you a guy who could go deep for you, who would be fun and also make the plays after the catch. Quez Watkins out of Southern Miss. Oh, I've got him somewhere. Yeah, he ran 4.35 40. He needs a little bit of time to get up to full speed, but he doesn't have bad acceleration, but it's not as good as his top end speed. He's a big play guy with open field skill. He can win the ball in the air. He's 6'1", 185. He's a little he's kind of more on that Jeremy Maclin, Paul Richardson kind of angle of things. So he's certainly a guy that could be that type of deep threat that could develop down the line, and that's reaching down pretty far. Yeah, I just got here. He's speed. He's more of a the arc. What do you call the arc, Matt? The curvy linear speed. Yeah, he's got a bit of that curvy linear speed as a wide receiver. I call him. He's the cobra of a snake charmer. Yeah, just that sort of like. I like that. Yeah, that's how I see this. And mate, don't expect him to run a big route tree. Not right now. No. Don't expect him to get in and out of breaks quickly. It's just not. It's just not who he is. Yeah. Would that be fair? I think that's very fair.
I'll give you one
He's
other
not
guy.
a physical guy either, except when it's a contested. It's all of a sudden like contested ball.
Yeah,
he's a different person. He's not a physical player, but as soon as that ball's in contested ball, it's like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde.
It's true. That's very true. That's a very good assessment with him. And it's interesting that you noted also, getting in and out of breaks. I mean, he has some bend to him, but he doesn't explode in and out of that.
No.
It's difficult for him never to do that.
I figure if they haven't really got that now, Matt, are they really going to – you're not, are you?
Probably not.
No.
Matt, I've got a quick question here from.
I was just going to give my play and see what Matt's.
Okay. Gee, sorry, you go.
James Prochet out of SMU.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Just a little dude, doesn't do anything exciting, but man, the dude he's always open. He's always open. Like when they get into the red zone, they're not looking for the big guy, mate. They're looking for him. And he just finds himself in all these little holes and pockets. It just comes down to, I think don't expect him to go and get jump balls. He's sort of shifty quick. He's not fast. But man, he's just very, very smart of knowing where to be to get the ball without anybody else around him.
Yeah, absolutely. And he is someone who is someone that wins that ball in the air and is, as I've heard Lance Zierlein talk about him on Twitter, he's kind of got an alpha mentality when it comes to going up to win the football.
Yeah, but I just think I like him. He's just like a real deep one. I just maybe at the next level he might get found out a little bit. That's all.
Yeah. So, I'm kind of there with you.
Yeah.
AJ? Go for it.
Yeah. I had a question from someone who was watching us, but has since gone to bed. But from Ireland, Luke O'Neill.
Oh, okay.
But I'll pop it up here. So he has said, and it's taken your face away, Matt. I'm sorry, I'll get rid of it in a second.
Don't worry about
it. You've jumped up. So he's talking Steelers potentially picking a wide receiver at 49. Who would be a good fit in that Steelers offense? I mean, Deontay Johnson's pretty handy. I think he's a pretty sneaky fantasy pick. But anyway, who do you think would be a good complement to who they have at the moment?
Yeah, it's a great question because, I mean, I think certainly you look at Juju Smith-Schuster and you realize you have that kind of possession guy who can get deep in the slot when you need him. You have a player like, you have Washington who doesn't run the right route depths but is incredible at the catch point. You have Deontay Johnson who's kind of up and down, if you ask me, but could be very good and develop into that.
Is he one of those guys that's going to make a living in the NFL off glimpses?
No.
Deontay Johnson.
No.
Yeah, like some team will pick him up later on and go, we've seen he can do this, but he doesn't do it enough. I've
got to give my obligatory, I'm a Cleveland Browns fan, and I'm trying to keep them to have work they can. So the more I compliment them, the better off that be for my Browns that they can. But no, seriously, if they're going to pick a guy, I like the idea of having a speedster or a pure number one, because really Juju Smith-Schuster to me is a guy who can be the number one receiver, but you'd much rather have him opposite a guy like Antonio Brown,
right,
or on that or close to that level. So who are some guys that could be that number one option that can do that type of job? Certainly Denzel Mims, who we talked about, could be a guy available in the early second round or mid second round that maybe they trade up to get him from 49, and maybe they do that. He could be a guy that could give you a little bit of everything. Maybe a guy like Chase Claypool, they could use him. I'm not a huge fan of him, but he's a guy with that speed that people look at, and they could see that from that perspective. Another player who, I think if they took their chances, Laviska Shenault could be a guy that if he drops due to injury concerns, could be that guy that they would look at further down the line. And then if they go later, if they go later in this particular look, to me, again, Cephas is a guy who may not be extremely fast, but he could kind of pair up with Smith-Schuster and be that Steelers type of receiver. I mean, he's a blocker, he's physical, he can play inside, play outside, he uses his hands well. So there's those types of looks. And if they go really late, a guy that I'm kind of interested in, I wanted to mention, who might be one of the interesting things about this draft dynamic when it comes to combine times is that guys who run bad combine times, who play at small schools, a lot of it's due to the fact that they just don't get the training they don't get taught to the test per se. So they may be better athletes on the football field than they are in a workout. And Antonio Gandy Golden out of Liberty is one of those guys who's, if you haven't seen him, then you probably...
I have. I've got him here somewhere, Matt. I've got him here.
Yeah, big guy.
He's about the only one we haven't talked. Actually, there's one more guy, if you don't mind hanging around. Just one more after this, please.
Yeah.
Please.
But he's a physical guy. He didn't run very fast, but he certainly showed a lot of separation at Liberty, even against Division I opponents. And he's great at winning the football, and he's terrific after the catch. And I just I don't think his times match up to what he's really probably about. And I wouldn't be surprised if he gets drafted late and ends up being a starter down the line.
The first line I wrote on him, okay, let's start with this, the QB. Effing bloody terrible. Poor thrower, poor power, poor reader of the defense, poor decision maker, slow when he decides to throw the ball. So that's all working against the wide receiver straight away, Matt.
Yeah. You don't... You're just straight no chaser about everything, aren't you?
That's just there is no grey.
I like it about you, but yeah,
there's no grey, Matt. There's no grey. I even wrote down he doesn't even throw when the bloody receiver is open.
See, there you go.
Huge wind up and release. So I've hardly written anything about Gandy Golden because I'm just having to go at the quarterback far too much, Matt.
I would love to see you on a show talking about quarterbacks with Mark Schofield. So I think that would be fun.
I'm going to do my quarterbacks next week.
See, there you go.
Yeah, and the hardest thing for us is as a quarterback. I think we've mentioned this before. Is we don't have wide receivers are easy and running backs because it correlates with our sports in Australia, so we can understand it. That's why I'm so big on hand positioning.
Yeah.
Quarterbacks, we don't even have anything in Australia that correlates to being a quarterback. So I have, mate,
they're weird.
Well, I can't get them right, and let's face it, most of the NFL doesn't get them right.
No,
they're weird. They're tough. Yeah, it's hard to do.
Like we had Paddy, right? You had him as your number one quarterback. I had him as the number one offensive player in that year. Full stop.
See, look at you. Good job.
Right, but mate, it was obvious, Matt, wasn't it?
I thought so, but now that half the league thinks that Jordan Love is going to be like the next Patrick Mahomes, I think.
How about Jordan Love? How about throw the ball away? That's the one thing I really with.
I don't think
Patrick
it was
Mahomes,
obvious to 31 general managers.
No, Patrick Mahomes throw the ball. If he's I'll throw the ball away. I don't care.
Yeah,
I'll make it on the next play.
Yeah,
I'm not going to turn the ball over.
Yeah.
But what do I have about Gandy Golden? Would you say his route tree is pretty basic at the moment, Matt? Is that because of small school at Liberty?
Yeah, I think
so. And maybe
so.
because his quarterback doesn't see him, so he has to keep him really simple.
Yeah, he has a smaller route tree and he has a limited number of release moves, but they all work extremely well.
Yeah. I just said, and for a big guy, man, he can stop on a dime.
Yeah. What he does well, and it takes 2 to 3 people to tackle him. And even if they do wrap around him, he's going to carry them, kind of like a streetcar carries people. I mean, he's going to take you. He's going to take you 10, 15, 20 yards down the field. Very big, strong guy, and physical play didn't phase him at all.
A few other things about it. I just said sometimes he looks a little bit laboured, like he's not putting in 100%.
Okay.
But I did like the fact that when he goes up and gets a contested ball, he's really late with his hands.
Yeah.
Like really late.
Yeah.
Which is great. Like the corner has no idea when the ball's coming.
Yeah.
He hides it very well. So, but he's just small school, another sort of that development type player, isn't he?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Now, this is a guy, this is the last one before we let you go, Matt. This is the first person I asked AJ about where did Matt have him in his rankings.
Look at this.
If you type in number 33 in your rankings, Matt.
Yeah.
Look
at you. Okay.
Come on. I said 30. I cursed a little bit when AJ told me, and your name was in part of that cursing. Matt has no idea what he's talking about. I'm going to bring him up on the show. It's probably good that we talk about him last.
Yes, it probably is.
And that's John Hightower out of Boise State.
Yeah.
To me, he is the ultimate cobra of the snake charmer.
Yep.
Small guy. I think that's what's really, in the end, Matt, I think that's what's going to hurt him. Is he one of AJ's favourite players out of his name escapes me now. Out of the Eagles, the slot guy at the Eagles,
Aguilar.
Is he in that sort of vein? Like, is he going to be that player? Like, when he gets to the pros?
Could be, yes. I'll put it to you this way. One of my absolute favorite players that I've graded over the past 10 years who showed what he could do in flashes but has never really built on his game was Paul Richardson, the Seahawks receiver out of Washington.
That's to be a good comp for Hightower.
It is, and that's my comp for him. But I think that Paul Richardson was well ahead of Hightower as a player at this level than where Hightower's at. Hightower definitely makes those plays, those snake charmer type of plays where he adjusts the ball really well. But he's also a type of player that's not willing to take the contact necessary to be able to win those balls. He's the type of guy that will literally drop to the ground the moment he catches a football rather than, and that's okay. Torrey Holt did that with the Rams. But, he will drop the ball to do that. And he's a guy who will even slide like as a punt returner. He'll literally like catch the ball and just slide to avoid getting hit. So if he's that concerned about contact at his height and weight, I'm a little worried about him being able to do, to be able to be that guy who teams can count on as a receiver in the NFL. He makes a lot of NFL caliber plays and weaves through the open field extremely well. He's
beautiful. Poetry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's great. But if Paul Richardson, who I think did it better, isn't where Paul isn't really at the level that he needs to be, we're in trouble with John Hightower because Richardson.
That's a good call, Matt. That's a good call.
And I feel you because I watched him and I immediately saw Paul Richardson and I love that. But there was a part of me too. I probably heard you because there was a part of me when I was grading him that I was like. When I put it there, and it was kind of like my younger self when I graded Paul Richardson and had him as a top 5 receiver, and then my younger self was yelling at my older self, going, "You can't do this. You can't grade him this low." But I'm like, but that's what I see. This is what my criteria shows now. This is how I grade, and what it was is I just didn't think that he ran a full enough route tree. I didn't think that he was going to handle getting off the line well. I didn't think he was going to handle physical play extremely well. And when you put all that together, that drops you down to the point where it's like he could be a reserve and he might be a Ted Ginn-like type of player on a even lower level. Where it's like every once in a while he's going to give you really strong production. Yeah. But is he going to even be a punt returner if he's sliding to end plays? I mean, I don't know. I don't know how the NFL is going to be about him running 10 yards and then seeing 2 guys come downhill at him and him slide. Like, I don't know if teams are going to really be keen on that compared to what they normally look for.
Yeah, Mind you, Matt, I see every free agency period, I see someone sign Ted Ginn. And my reaction is, he's still playing. He's still in the league.
I'll just say this. The fun thing about Ted Ginn was when he's paired with the right quarterback, he's so much fun to play in DFS in leagues where you're playing. Like we did a thing with football guys, and I always had so much fun using him as a late play because if the right matchups, you could get a lot of big points out of him for absolutely nothing, and it'll win you weeks. So I've when I think about DFS, I always think of Ted Ginn for some reason because like he's been a fun pick. But yeah, I agree with you. It's just like it's amazing that he's gotten this much out of his career as a 2nd round pick who didn't know how to use his hands to address the football.
Now we've got a listener of ours. He's come into the studio a couple of times, Dave Evans Smith, who's a big Browns fan.
And kudos to him. He's a paramedic, so he's on the front line at the moment.
He is on the front line, actually. So, shout out to all the people on the front line, including my wife, who's a nurse. So, a lot of people, really sort of putting their family and their health on the line. But Dave threw this up here. He's and you might have this might be a little bit of a personal wish as well, Matt. In terms of your Browns, like who would you like to see him sort of add to that wide receiver core
as the number 3 he's put down here?
Yeah, and like the 115th pick or later. So I guess what round we're looking at there, like the day 3 as a third day pick. Cephas would be the number 1 guy on my list because I think he's going to drop down due to the fact that he had, he had criminal charges that where he was expelled from school and he had to go on trial for them. And he was acquitted very quickly of those charges. And so I think that he'll probably interview fairly well. And I think that what will happen with the nature of that it may drop him some because it'll have less to do with the charges and more to do with it'll have something to do with the charges because they'll be like, why'd you put yourself in the situation? So that'll be the first thing. But then the other part of it will also be he missed a year. And then he also didn't test well immediately at the combine and he wasn't as prepared probably to run the 40. But to me, a guy like that, to where you could have that tough guy who can play outside, but also work inside in case they don't stick with, he could be both a slot and a flanker, and that could work opposite Odell Beckham Jr. That would be a lot of fun because he's a physical type of player, and I'd love to see him run through the Steelers defense on a regular basis.
It's a bit like that, isn't it? It's like the situations like you see a shooting at you're at a gang headquarters or whatever, and you saw a shooting. I had nothing to do with it. What are you doing? What are you doing there in the first place?
Right.
Like the decision to be there it's not what happened, and the fact he didn't do it. It's like, why are you here?
Yeah, and there's and the situation's a sensitive one because it has to do with sexual assault, and so the nature of the nature of the thing, and I again we're on in the morning with you guys, but but the same situation is that he was accused of raping 2 women, and certainly more often than not you would believe the victim, and I certainly understand why that's the case, and but at the same time the court acquitted him within rapid fashion because essentially what was proven was that they invited themselves to his home. They proceeded to initiate everything that happened. And he had a roommate who came home and pretty much witnessed this. And there were some inconsistencies with their corroboration, with their testimony that basically led to the jury acquitting him in very quick fashion. So, it was a situation where, certainly it's a sensitive matter, and because it was a matter that sensitive, it's probably likely to drop him down because you're like, at the same time, they're college kids and they're young adults and they're exploring and all those types of things, where they're going to get involved in situations that are unfamiliar to them. And some people are, they're young and they're both women and men test boundaries that they might not get into when they get older. And they might have learned their lesson or decide that's something that was interesting to decide to try, but maybe not something I'm going to try now as an adult, as an older adult. And I think that he was in that kind of a situation where teams will say, you can't get in that kind of situation again. And even though you're probably going to be presented with those possibilities as an athlete and a celebrity, but you're going to have to be very careful about how you look, approach these type of scenarios. And there's also some additional elements that were probably involved in that are specific to how the United States and their history has been when it comes to regards to race. That was also probably an element involved with this that I probably won't get into, here, but that certainly that may have been an added element with all of this as well. So, I can't tell you about the character of the individual, but the teammates seem to really rally around him. And there was even talk that if he wasn't allowed back into the school, that there was some talk about them protesting that the football players themselves and some of the key football players on the team who were, vouched for him. That tells you a lot about him. I think that tells you something about him as well. So, as long as he, when you look at it from that perspective, it'll probably drop his grade because of the fact that they wonders, we have some questions and there's some things on his record here. But just like anything else, if he's looked at that situation, and I'm sure he has, that it was like, wow, this was a situation that a lot of college kids engage in, that people talk about fondly, 20 years from then, and may have said that was a great experience. And for me,
they put it in movies.
Yeah.
College guys too, like.
Yeah, exactly.
Even today, they'd put it in a movie.
Yeah, exactly.
The situation,
Exactly. And so it's one of those scenarios where, for some people, it turns out to be a fond experience. For him, it turned out to be an absolute nightmare. And if we go by the letter of the law, and that he was acquitted, and that as a fact that he was innocent of those charges, and if he isn't, and we find out later on that he has some behaviors that are consistent with what he was accused of doing, then hopefully that those behaviors don't turn out to hurt somebody else in the future, and that they can be that if something does happen, it's not to the level or to the degree of what he was accused of. So that's kind of how I look at that.
Okay, Matt, before you go, which has been like 45 minutes ago,
let's round it off at 2 hours.
Yeah, I mean, with everything that's going on with COVID-19 and the draft, the draft's still going ahead, but like camps and whatnot. This is a really big year, more so than any other year, for these guys, these receivers to get drafted, because there's going to be some guys, because of the situation at the moment, they're going to fall through the cracks and probably never actually get a shot. Because they can't go to a camp and prove themselves.
And who were some of those guys?
Oh, well, I wouldn't know who the guys like. Well, if we look at like last year, Preston Wounds, for instance, like if this was this year, he's a guy that might
be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, look, he doesn't get drafted. We don't get a chance to bring him in. We just we're more content on the guys that we know character, what we can make of it so far from what our scouts say. So there might be some wide receivers. I don't know who they might be, because I don't know what teams are thinking and their needs, Matt, but that might just fall through the cracks this year because of COVID-19 and there's no camps, no practice.
Yeah, and one of those guys I could see how that would be the case would be a guy like Aaron Parker out of Rhode Island, who's a 6'1", 209-pound player with very good quickness and acceleration.
You've got me, Matt. You always get me with one guy. Okay,
yeah.
What's Parker?
So he's he's more of a slot receiver. He needs to develop a little bit more physicality to his game. But he's a guy that's a late round player that could be a problem with. But to look at it from a larger issue, I'm a little more concerned about the 2021 NFL draft class than I am about this one, because this class is going to at least get a chance to be with the team, and they're going to be signed, and they're going to have a contract, and the teams already saw enough of their tape to get an idea about who they could become, and they'll have a year in an NFL camp, possibly, even if they're not necessarily playing, they're going to get a little bit of a shot. So it'll be tough for them. I agree. But what if college football doesn't have a season? Yes. And then if college football doesn't have a season, or they delay it, like I've heard people say, what if they delayed it till like the spring? Well, does that mean Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne and all these star players who are going to get drafted, are they going to want to play in the spring if the NFL is set to play in the fall? Because then they might not have sufficient time to recover. If they get hurt, They don't want to put themselves in danger of that kind of situation. That could create a whole lot of fallout. And then there's players who we just know nothing about, who, Denzel Mims wasn't a thing until this year, until this year of tape, even though
Joe Burrow.
Joe Burrow. Yeah.
Yeah. Joe Burrow. Perfect example. Even better example.
Yeah.
So, what about those players who become stars? And now in that final year, and if they don't play this year, you're just basically going off 2019 tape for the 2021 draft.
Yeah.
And there are going to be a lot of, it's going to be a challenge for people who evaluate like myself. And it's going to be a challenge for just teams because they know there are guys that may have grown who they may end up with steals. We may end up in a draft where, say, we do the world develops a vaccine, within the next 12 to 16 months or next 18 months. And then, as a result of that, we don't have a college football season, but we have an NFL draft. And there are going to be guys that are undrafted free agents who might have the talent that they would have been first round picks if they had got the season that they had. And so we're going to see myopic fans go, they really screwed that all up, I mean, you're going to see that everywhere, but it's really about that dynamic is that these players grow fast oftentimes or they get opportunities. And now that they have the opportunity, they show their stuff and they just won't have that opportunity next year.
Yeah, like a seasonal jump makes a massive difference to, like, I have a son and I watch him play sport, and it's almost like it happens overnight, Matt. 1 minute he's like, geez, dude, you got to really pick your game up. And a week later, it's gone, oh my God, where did this come from?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what happens. So we see it in the NFL. Guys go from college and they're okay college guys. They get drafted, they get into a higher grade of level of sport, and they're a totally different player. And then they're the guys that shrink. Yeah. So it's going to be very interesting with everything that's going on. Well, I've got an excuse now when I blow it on guys that I think are going to be good. That's COVID-19. That's what it is. Yeah, that's what it is.
It's the COVID-19 draft. There we go.
All right, Matt. Right. Yeah, wrap this up, AJ. Matt's been
I absolutely will. You are always extremely generous with your time. We thank you from the bottom of our hearts. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and thank you so much. And certainly for anyone who's watching this that does live under a rock, Matt Waldman, RSP.com, and certainly to give you a follow, Matt Waldman, and obviously the Audible, and lots of ways that people can.
This is great.
Yes, the RSP Film Room, which is awesome. Yep. So there's certainly lots of ways that people can find out more. But I mean, we only talked wide receivers, so go get yourself a copy of the RSP and dive into quarterback, running back, tight end, and there's hundreds of pages of
when's the Audible version
reading.
Come out, Matt?
What's that?
When's the Audible version come out?
Never.
I've got a job, Matt, where I'm just painting away, and I put things in my head. I could.
I wish.
Sit there and it'd be great. It'd be great.
It would take a fair commitment of time to record an Audible version of the RSP.
It probably would. I need lots of throat drops, probably.
My word.
Thanks, Matt, for coming on. Much appreciated.
Thank you, fellas.
For the time we've kept you, that's the extra couple of packets of Tin Tams. If I can smuggle them out of the supermarkets, they only let them take like 2 at a time at the moment. So
I appreciate the sentiment, and they are fantastic. But it's okay. We're good. I need to watch my weight and get back into shape. So
maybe toilet paper. We'll send you some toilet paper.
Hey, see, there you go. I know better. Especially with all the greens I plan on growing with my with my hydroponic garden one day. So
I went vegan for a couple of months, 3 months. Matt, gave it a go, and let me tell you, you spend a bit more time there than
you do.
Normal. You do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, Matt. Well, thanks very much. Go and enjoy your night, and thanks again for coming on. Much appreciated.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Right. My pleasure.
Take care.
All right.
Bye, Matt.
Bye.
Bye. See ya. Okay, that was a marathon effort, but amazing as always.
I think we covered everybody. I think pretty much
that you had on your list.
Oh, I had about 40 guys. So we didn't cover 40 guys, but
Yeah.
There's guys that probably, I start looking at just in case I don't want to miss anybody.
Yeah.
And look, I'm going to miss somebody like this Parker guy. I've already missed him already. So
right.
I think Matt did a few more than I did.
Yeah.
But
and look, we don't have sort of obviously unlimited time, but the one thing that I do really admire about Matt's process is he does try to not listen to what other people are saying about prospects. And then he gets all of his opinions down. And then once he's got that sorted, then he kind of opens the shutters up and see, okay, what are other people saying? And so in that sense, when you read the RSP or listen to his opinions, you're getting straight up what, his definite opinion on a prospect is right or wrong. But he's done that from a pure analytical film watching perspective. He's not been influenced by other people.
No, and look, you have to be that. Like when I start doing mine, I do exactly the same way. It's hard not to because I listen to other pods.
Yes. Yeah. It is hard.
People are wrong all the time.
Of course.
Everybody's wrong. Everybody's got an opinion about, and it's not even like 50 like him and 50 don't. It's 33, 33, 33. Some people some people really like him and some people
But
really
gee,
don't.
if we took all these prospects and loaded them, if there was no NFL, but all it was Madden, say, right? So you get all these prospects and you line them all up in Madden, I dare say would probably be 80% right. Because I mean the big unknown is that mental issue, the mental
look, is it I wouldn't say 80%. Mate, if I hit 50%, I'd be wrapped.
Oh no, it'd be higher. It's just that you just never know what players are actually going to do with their God-given skills,
from a mental point of view.
From the mental point of view and coaching and scheme and all of those things as well.
Yeah.
Maybe 80% is overstating it. But I'm just saying.
I missed on Juju Smith-Schuster. I didn't think he was as physical a player as I think he should be at the college
level. You just never know if a guy is actually going to just decide that football is really the thing that he wants to do.
Once you get hit by grown ass men.
Yeah, well, that's right. Exactly.
You start to realise maybe, my opinion of myself isn't as high as I thought it was now.
I mean, there's a fair percentage who are doing it for the paycheck as opposed to, I really love this game,
It's a job.
It's a job.
For a percentage of them, yeah, for sure. It's just a job. It's a very well-paid job. And mate, it's no different from any other occupation going around. There's plenty of people that don't like their job, but it's a good paycheck.
Absolutely.
And it allows you to live a good lifestyle.
Yes.
And there's some of us that enjoy our job and our pay sucks.
Yep. Two pictured on screen. Right.
Yeah. But
so, anyway, marry
someone who makes a lot of money.
I get paid a decent wage. I shouldn't complain.
Yeah. You're always on holidays. if you worked it out to how much time you actually work compared to what you're getting paid,
then I'd be extremely well paid. Yeah, there's no question. All right. Well, we'll wrap it up. That was fantastic, and obviously a marathon.
Two-parter for sure. This one.
Oh, I'll split it up. But thank you to everybody who tuned in live, and if you're watching this back, thank you. Yes, a long one, but hey, we've got time on our hands, haven't we? So that's fine. And we'll get on to some other positions in the short term, near future. Yep. We certainly will. Next. But running backs next, okay?
Almost at the end of the running backs.
Okay.
So,
sounds good.
The running back class, I see the running back class a little bit like the wide receiver class. It's the flatten of the curve.
Okay.
That's just how I see it. So,
but a lot of it's going to be very landing spot dependent. There's
no Barclays. There's no Zeeks. To me, there's none of those. DeAndre Swift's good, but he ain't any of those guys.
Right. Okay.
So, and he's got faults as well. But yeah, we all have faults, AJ. Some more than others.
Well, even Zeke does.
Yeah. Not coming out though. No. He's picked up a few more now.
Yeah, that's very true. All right, we'll wrap this up. Thanks everybody. Appreciate you tuning in and listening. And on behalf of G and myself, we will catch you next time. and I'll hit end. Ciao.